hold your peace, hang tight. The moment's coming. Think of, again, Moses is out there and there's people screaming at him from the audience, from the crowd around him. Why did you bring us out here? Pharaoh and his army are coming at us. Look at that cloud. It's a great cloud of dust coming at us from all the chariots. And Moses says, hold your peace. Yeah. The people that are coming after you after today, you'll never see them again. God will provide a way. The river, river hadn't even been parted yet, okay, for them to go over onto the other side in safety. Moses had to turn, walk over to the river bank, raise the staff, and then the water parted like a wall on either side, and they crossed on dry ground. What's interesting about that, by the way, just so everybody here knows, a little detail. It says they went across on dry ground. They went across on foot with all the people. And as they're crossing and just getting across the river, the chariots are bearing down on them. They come racing into the riverbed, and the wall of water is still held up on either side. As they got out into the middle of the river, they started to get into a problem because their chariot wheels went down through the top surface, which was dry for the children of Israel as they crossed, but it cut down through that upper layer and began to cake up with mud. Their chariots got bogged down with mud as they came across. Then as the last of the children, because these things are bearing down and they're coming on them, but it gets slower and slower and slower and slower because they get bogged down in the mud. When the whole of the Egyptian army, not part of them, were fully in the river and caked down with mud on their wheels and couldn't get out of the way, and the people of Israel had just crossed into safety, the wall came tumbling down, just like happened at the Jericho. But here was the wall of water on both sides, inundated them and drowned the whole Egyptian army. Something similar is about to happen here. Those people that have been coming after us through election frauds and chasing us down right down to the last second, we have the data. We know how they're doing it, how they've been doing it. We have the people that have a good grip on it. We have way more intricate detail worldwide than a lot of these people understand. And as we get down to our midterm election day, I believe that the plan is to pause it and then start the process of arrests, starting with the Russia stuff, and then moving through other areas. And by the way, I mentioned to you, John, when you were here with me the other day, the latest data that I've been monitoring was provided to me by friends concerning all the federal district courts around the country, 56 of them, because you have territories besides the states, just a very small number shy of 500,000 sealed indictments when you add it up between all the courts over the last several years that are still active. Just shy of 500,000 sealed indictments sitting, waiting to be served. This is many, many, many times the normal number. This is unbelievable behind the scenes. Now, the sealed indictments can be for all sorts of things. It could be immigration frauds. It could be election stuff, gangs, whatever. Each indictment isn't just one person. The indictments can have between 1 and 99 named persons within a single sealed indictment. And these have been heard by grand juries. So this is an astounding number. This isn't just some rogue prosecutor or group of prosecutors doing stuff, some secret, star chamber situation. This is all relatively in the open by grand juries, which meet in secret as far as their actual proceedings, who have handed down these indictments because of the fact that there's ongoing investigations, just like if you had a drug or criminal cartel of some sort doing something, and you maybe get one guy on murder, but you don't want to spill the beans before you get other people that may have been involved. You seal that indictment while you're continuing to bring the charges against the rest to fill it out without spilling beans. Well, to have almost 500,000 sealed indictments, if you had, let's say they're not 99 in every indictment, but maybe an average of 10, well, that would be 5 million people under indictment. Is that immigration fraud and things like that? If you had the full 99, every single one, that'd be 50 million people, under indictment. So there's some wild aspect to this. Is it some small portion? Look, if it was, half of the 5 million, if it was a quarter of the 5 million, you're still talking about 1.5 or 1.25 million people on those indictments. If you were just having 2 or 3 people in indictment, so 4 people in indictment, it's an astounding number no matter what, and that still hasn't been served. They're active. They're not there for no reason. They're holding till the critical moment when they can be served in mass. Well, the reality is that there's so much here that we will probably be even still involved in war crimes trials 10 years from now.
Okay.
There's a lot of work that has to be done here. And then again, like I just mentioned, we're nowhere close to the worst of the storm. Mm-hmm. I've Cuban Missile Crisis type events in there also. We've got one of the most critical things in here is the reset of the cell phone system, which has been weaponized nationwide. So we have a lot of technical things that can't be rushed through, and a checklist that has to be gone through to make America safe again, and to see justice served, even in doing a military component, which is absolutely the only way to get America's election system and economy back on track correctly. We're in a wartime environment, even if you don't know it. We're already in a national security emergency that has been declared, but most people have failed to recognize that it's still ongoing, back to the initiation of it on March 13th of 2020 by President Trump, that we would never have gotten control of our elections ever again. Once that got in place, you wouldn't have a legal context in which to own and control your elections. It really was, in Star Trek terms, a Tholian web of containment being sewn around the whole world, that in order to once completed, we wouldn't be able to break out of with the technology individually that we have. So this is that moment where we break out of this web and then take control of the situation once again, on our elections, on our money, what constitutes money, our economics, and one that's not very widely seen. What makes the world go round? Energy. And this attack on America to choke us down to where we didn't have access to our energy supplies and could function, including this reindustrialization of America, this coordinated attack on energy production and supply routes. That's one of the things we'll be covering at the summit here in September, and the fight back. You may have seen, I think I showed it to you yesterday or day before when you were here. The president issued a order that increased the oil production off the coast of California by 550% under the Defense Production Act, and ordered that oil go into the pipeline system, which takes it through El Segundo, California, the refinery there, to keep enough energy, refined energy, oils, fuel, gas, uh, for military purposes, but it also assists on the civilian side. Now, that's was a very partial thing, and there's more to come. Northern California is in an extremely dire situation, and most Californians really don't understand it. The rest of the West Coast really doesn't understand it. But the shutdown of the major refineries in California is being because of regulations the California government has put into place that are just, bizarre, uncalled for. They're looking at shutting down, essentially half the refinery capacity in California. You're facing a situation where, in a matter of months, and this isn't hyperbole. If you remember, you're just old enough to remember, a little bit of a kid, but just barely old enough to remember probably when we had the gas lines and then went to odd, even days to get gas back in the mid 70s. And I remember hearing the Saudi oil minister when everybody was going after the Saudis on oil production and blah, blah, blah. And he says, the problem in America isn't an oil production problem. Quit looking at us and the pricing like that. It's a refinery problem. You're not refining enough gas for the public. And, that's your real crisis. And that was totally true. We're coming into a refinery crisis across the country. And when you push refineries and don't do scheduled maintenance for various reasons, keep them going, put too much pressure on any individual refinery, that's when you get huge fires. They're talking about taking out half the refining capacity in California. The remaining refineries, to keep up with demand, they start bypassing checkpoints for maintenance and service, or they themselves have to shut down with no backup capacity to fill the gap. It affects the whole country. Right now, a couple of the airlines are taking jet fuel from the East Coast and bringing it to the West Coast just to keep enough jet fuel to keep their aircraft operating from LAX and other airports because the refinery capacity is being shut down. This is a monstrously huge crisis that affects the whole country because as you bleed off those stocks off the East Coast, now they're in a more precarious situation just because of California has gone out of their minds. So we'll be talking about that during the Storm Summit. But you could end up with $10 gas very easily in California, plus odd even days. Brace yourselves. There's stuff that can be done. The president, I think, has started to address it 2 days ago with the Defense Production Act being enforced on this. And I think there will be other layers to it. But for all the ranting and screaming that may come from it, this is a huge national security issue, especially as we come back into the reindustrialization of America. And for example, shutting down the Valero plant. These refineries are orders of magnitude more complicated and in some ways riskier even than a nuclear plant. There's certain things you do. We run refineries very well all over the world, just fine. But you don't just turn them on and off like a spigot. In fact, when Valero is very close now to where once you've shut it down past a certain point, and they've been ordered essentially to shut down, you can't restart it. In fact, you could come back a year from now and say, well, we decided to go ahead and run Valero and let's go start it back up. You have lost the infrastructure, personnel and equipment wise. It won't be able to be restarted. You'll have to go start another plant somewhere else completely. It's a very complex operation. And the institutional knowledge, et cetera, the supply lines, the function, the personnel, you're not going to restart it. It's gone forever. This is a national tragedy. It's a regional tragedy. and cannot be allowed to go forward. But the fight that's going to be involved can only be resolved at this point with something from the president related to the Defense Production Act. And that needs to happen very, very quickly. So we'll be addressing that at the Storm Summit and let others weigh in on it as needed.
We got these things on the docket. We got a pardon, and then challenges of the pardon because of the Otto Penn presidency, and then we have a contempt of Congress potential charge from Rand Paul. My question to you is, which is the likely path to bringing Fauci to justice? And in Juan's crystal ball, how long will this charade play out before justice is served?
Well, let me say it this way, John. As satisfying as it may be for many to bring some kind of swift justice in these matters, the reality is that we don't do lynchings in a just system here in America. And in fact, let's just talk strategy. When you're doing certain things within a legal realm, sometimes the correct action is to hold while you develop your case before you bring in your, pivotal star witness or something like that. Now, Fauci being questioned before Congress is pivotal, and it started to break this illusion for many, including many of the people that had at some point supported Fauci. The wizard has, the curtain's been pulled back.
Yes.
But there's still a lot more to be played out that just isn't quite yet understood. And so having him there dangling for a bit, allowing the spectacle to develop to, allow the diners to assemble, if you will, is not a wrong strategy, because much of the country still, they view people within this audience as being, over exercised on things, over exuberant on many things. And while you've been vindicated in many ways, there's a long ways to go towards full, real vindication. I don't just want a feel good moment. I want justice done.
Yes.
And Fauci didn't do what he did in a vacuum. There are many, 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 many people who operated with and benefited from the actions of Mr. Fauci. And more importantly, he was somebody's tool in their toolbox. Mm-hmm. He wasn't there of his own volition to affect the vote. He was a tool in somebody's toolbox to be used to create a circumstance within the sports community. These were people that would suffer from this shot even more than otherwise healthy people might. And that's been the case. I was mostly concerned with military age people and trying to make the case indirectly that the military personnel can't and should not take the shot. Many didn't. Even under incredible pressure. Get over it, figure it out, operate accordingly. And that's what's going on. We're about to see this whole thing escalate. We're up to temperature for the most part. Manifold temperature pressures are correct. We're going to move out onto the flight line and get the go signal, and we're going to be taking off here shortly. And it's going to be epic. Brace yourselves. But it's not going into a category 7. We're only at the election time. We're only in a category, 4. In the interim, enjoy life.
With the election, the probable election delay moving beyond November, in your crystal ball, is that a few weeks, a few months, a year? And why?
Well, the whole
Why?
point,
Why? Why?
the whole point in pausing the election is because there's been election interference. That's what the president was talking about 2020, that China uh, flipped our elections, interfered in elections, and successfully flipped it. Biden didn't win the election. Biden didn't get more votes than Obama. These frauds have been in place, electronic ballot, and even the propaganda. There was testimony from Google execs that just by changing the way the search engines access information within the Google system, Google alone could potentially flip 15 million votes according to their own internal analysis. That's just Google. We're coming into an AI world. Information's getting thrown all over the place. People go after shiny. They don't dig deeper than what somebody just said. Well, this is what happened. You got to believe this. And then other people come in and sift through it. But unfortunately, they come to it late. The election's already happened. The deed is done, the October surprise type stuff. So in this era that we're coming up into as a world, if you don't get elections reined in, election processes reined in now, this Tholian web of containment gets completed, and now you'll never get away from the globalista, the oligarchs, controlling who gets in power, how the money gets spent, how you're controlled and put under the thumb of some global cabal or groups of cabals, and thrown into war after war after war after war to bleed off your young people and their creativity. You're the cannon fodder, not their kids, and take over the world. We have to get the election processes reined back in, and then simultaneous, not separately, but just a half step behind, we go after the economic side. Honest elections, honest money. Those are themes that we'll have within our presentations here at the Storm Summit. And of course, let's go back to 9/11. 9/11, whether you grasp it completely now or not, was about its own role in controlling the election processes, the environment, the atmosphere of how you go about things, creating Homeland Security, which, hello, we had CISA over at Homeland Security, supposed to protect us on the digital vote frauds. They did nothing to protect us. In fact, everything they did helped to ensure that those thefts within the electronic side continued unabated. When we get into justice being served, many of those people are going to have to do some answering, just like Fauci did. It's going to be gruesome for them because China's all through this. This isn't just mere hyperbole by Trump about China interfering in the 2020 election and beyond. We haven't even look, I mentioned to you privately over the past couple of days, I think I took calls while you were there. What's happening right now, almost unseen, unknown across the country, a number of investigations have been moved to a different level concerning campaign finance and the origins of the funds going into the campaign finance for offices all through the country. Those investigations are getting ramped up pretty quickly, in part because you had private groups who did a tremendous amount of work looking at the usual suspects and some of the minor suspects around the country. Just one operation run totally privately in a major state that I've been aware of for the last couple of years. They've got like 30 binders identifying key people, key operations, focused around the largest one of the largest counties in the country, and then out through the networks into and out of that location to adjoining operations within the state and other states and its flow of funds. As the investigators, multi-agency investigations have been put in place, literally several of them on the same day as the president presented to the country. They're looking at the origins and flow of campaign finance money. That's different than the vote specifically, because what does a campaign spend that money on primarily? Well, it's the propaganda to go with the candidate. It's the advertising. And where's the advertising done? Well, a huge percentage of it is in the mainstream media and the sub outlets that have agreements with those main, media that have the licensing. Why is that important? Because hearing the ad, even the way news stories are conducted and interviews are scheduled, gives certain people weight and momentum that other people can't compete with. In fact, in one of the specific things that we've been working on over the last several days, I think lawsuit's going to be filed tomorrow on one specific matter. Other candidates within this state said, if we don't take this money, we'd never get a chance to be in office. Oh, really? So you have to take foreign money to have a prayer of winning the election because you want to do good things. But if you don't take that foreign money, you don't stand a chance, and it would go to somebody else. So you do something wrong because that way at least you get into power. And you save your family and blah, blah, blah. The way I couched this to the people involved, I said, so in other words, in order to get 2 U.S. senators in a low population state, you're willing to take this outside money, which over 50% of the money, well over that in this one particular race, came from outside the state. And most of that money that came from outside the state actually has foreign sources going back to China, specifically China. So literally Chinese operatives funnel money into campaigns locations here in the States and then flow it out to specific campaigns they want, of which in this particular state's case, till the suit's filed, I don't want to say, as the candidate said when we talked to him privately about this, well, I wouldn't even be able to get into office. I didn't take this foreign money. So it's in essence, you have to take this money, you have to prostitute yourself in order to stay alive, stay viable. They're going after the senators, all the other positions, governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and down the list, other locations, all the way down to city council and dog catcher, are gravy. The key thing is to get a couple of senators. If you can get the money in the right places, get the right forced prostitution in the right places, to get a couple of senators in a half dozen states, you affect the U.S. senators, you affect the whole country. And then the governors, secretaries of state, attorney generals are like pieces on the chessboard to protect those players. But you got the senators, which blocks the money, which is the most important, or allows the money to flow to chosen people, locations, etc. The U.S. Senate's the key. And so there was an active campaign run precisely out of China. They gamed it out. They looked at the big board. They said the best way to control America is to control the senators. And if you control the campaigns for U.S. Senate and the money going to the right people to get those people in office, the easiest place to do it is low population states out in the West. And then you affect the way that House and the Senate operate. Remember, the SAVE Act was passed over at the House several times. At the U.S. Senate, for all sorts of bizarre reasons, the Senate just wouldn't pass it. It's inexplicable. this happens over and over and over again on numerous subjects. So the Senate's really the key, controlling a half dozen low population states because it's less expensive. The cost for advertising, the candidates, everything else is much simpler, clearer, easier. And to propagandize a small percentage of the population, you're going to get everything. We're going to take care of you. We bring home the bacon every day. Cheap date. And that's what's happened in these Western states that are low population. And so we have to go back against that. In fact, you'll see some of the pushback beginning even over the next several days with things going on there, which ultimately goes to campaign finance. The other foot that really hasn't fallen thus far with what the president presented concerning the attack on elections through the vote and the vote machines and the false ballots now goes to the campaign financing. And by the way, Singapore is deeply involved. Players out of Singapore are deeply involved in this. When we looked at the fake paper ballots that came into the country, they came through Singapore first and then went to the West Coast up to Vancouver, BC, and then down to Tacoma, Washington. They came in on the East Coast through Baltimore, and but they came from China to Singapore first. When we look at other of the operations, including the financial, Singapore was a key choke point before it went out to other operations like FTX, this falsehood down there in the Silicon Valley that was a pass-through for election finance fraud and money laundering. So this is going to be a developing story that'll develop very quickly. It won't be years to develop. It'll be over the next couple of months and in court filings and like that. So, we're moving from, where people, well, why isn't this being done? Why isn't that being done? How come they're not operating quicker? How come the president this and that and the other thing? Deep breaths. Hold your peace. We're moments from these next triggers beginning to get hit. And anybody wants to say, oh, yeah, we've heard that before. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Well, you AIs that are saying that, you won't have long to wait. The midterms are a specific date. We're literally just long weeks away from that. Watch and see. Then you can criticize all you want. See if I'm not right. So anyway, hope that answers the question. I don't even know where you were on the question. But.
Would it be a fair summarization, Juan, to state in part that those previously elected that have made their ways to the ballot were done perhaps in a fraudulent manner? We don't have our voter rolls in order, even though the president sort of requested of all the counties to do so. We don't have proper protocols in place to conduct free and fair elections, and therefore they're going to be suspended, delayed for a period of time. Would you say 3 to 6 months or 9 months to a year? What's your best guess?
Well, I guess that was the question you had.
Yeah, it's okay.
Before I went off on my rant here a moment ago.
No problem.
It wasn't an executive request. It was an executive order. The president issued his 107th executive order March 25th of 2025 at 1:07 in the afternoon, signed. And that ordered that the county clerks around the country, under the supervision of the Secretary of States and governors of each of the states, would clean up their voter rolls, duplicate voters, people that aren't authorized to vote because they aren't U.S. citizens, etc. That they clean up those voter rolls, and they had 180 days to do so. By 25 of September 2025, how many counties around the country had successfully cleaned up their voter rolls? 0. They would make statements, oh, well, we use ERIC, which is to look at legitimate voters versus people that aren't supposed to be there. A questionable operation at the very least. But nothing was changed of any substance at all compared to 2022 or 2020. Okay, the voter rolls are still corrupted. You're not going to get to an honest election. And you've already held the primaries and sealed in who the candidates are in many places. So you're not actually going to have an honest election because you haven't even had an honest primary. You could do a perfect election at this point in time, November 3rd, 2026, and it would still be a fraudulent election because the people that got on the voter, the ballots, got there through election fraud and mischief in many cases. And it doesn't have to be every election in the country. It only has to be certain places. And it still violates the civil rights of people on the other side of the country. Because if you have, for example, a state or a couple different states, handful of states who are operating fraudulently to get, let's say, U.S. senators into the U.S. Senate through election mischief and fraud, then they can gum up the works of the whole country with just a tiny handful of senators from a couple of states. And now your senators that you brought in from your state are nullified. Okay. You got 100 plus senators, and then you have, a certain percentage are always going to vote, one way or with the current administration centra. You throw a half dozen, oddballs in there, you throw off the balance, you can't get anything through. You gum up the works. And of course, the spending happens on the Senate side. The proposed spending happens on the House side. And then it has to be approved on the Senate side. So just like what happened with the House with the SAVE Act, got vote, 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 positive, get to the Senate, not happening. So now you have a pause. Let's say I'm right, and that the president decides to pause the midterms. And a number of fairly significant folks have come forward and agreed with me that the president's going to pause the midterms. It's conceivable that he would wait to act before they take office at the first part of January of 2027. But I don't think that's going to be the case, but it would be for cause because of the information within the elections. But I think, and anybody that thinks they know exactly what the president's going to do is full of shit, because he's not telegraphing precisely his next moves. He's preparing you that something radical is about to happen, but he's not telegraphing that. A couple of the voices that are significant and actually talk to the president pretty regularly, I mean, once or more a week, have said they believe that the president's going to pause the election sometime late August. I would say that that's personally highly unlikely. Have lots of love for the people that are saying that. Got it. Good guys. I think when you look at what's going on, that from their standpoint, because that would be the easiest for the country, it'd give us the most time to prepare ourselves for how we're going to get this under control, etc. No, he's going to let them continue to commit the crimes, and in fact, even get the early voting started. I don't think he stops it till the tail end of October 2026 at the last minute. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. Is that open to discussion? Absolutely, because nobody knows with precision exactly what's going to happen outside of a very tight circle around the president and the president himself. So take a deep breath. Logistically, I think the setup is aimed around a late October pause. Could be all the way up to when people take office, although I personally think that's highly unlikely for a lot of logistical reasons, but we don't know. When that happens, if you say the objective is to right the wrongs that would happen if you had the election on time, what wrong is already in place? The election's already fixed. You can't fix the November 3rd elections because it's already fixed. You've already got people on the ballot through fraudulent primaries that aren't the will of the people, through ballot fraud and election techniques fraud that, they're on the ballot for this fall. If you had an election on time, you just seal the deal. Even if you only paused, let's say, for 3 months and then went forward and got a perfect election, you would do it with the existing candidates that made it through to the general election right now. You wouldn't be taking out the primary stuff. So the reality is that doesn't address the underlying condition that we're already in. It's much more fundamental in what's wrong. And those fundamental things, the way the election is conducted, the voter rolls, which are corrupted and haven't been fixed so far, couldn't get fixed in 180 days. Well, they're going to fix them in
There you go.
180 days after he pauses the election? Probably not. So my attitude on this whole thing is, and there is nobody on the outside of the specific plan that knows with precision exactly what's intended. But when you game this out, you don't have to be that much of a rocket scientist to understand. A lot of the people that are on the ballot currently, in the course of the pause and arrests related to some of the other subject matter and heading for election integrity, are going to shuffle the deck on the entire ballot as it exists or will exist by the time we get to October. In which case, you have to allow another opportunity for people to decide who may not have wanted to run for office because they knew it was just a shit show, that may think again, well, maybe I will run this time. So you have to have room for them to do the mental evaluation. You have to allow that a number of the candidates may be removed from contention or think again, do they really want to run for office? And some of them that got blocked out by the frauds to date would go for it again. So when that happens, they've got to have a fair shake at getting a little money, running a fair campaign, going through the primary process, and then getting on the general ballot and have it run again. Could you do all of that plus the necessary arrests and reset of the systems in fundamental ways, moving away from the machines and going to a hand count, paper ballot counted where cast? We're not putting the ballots in the trunk of the police car, not having the firemen carry it in their boot to the election counting center. Counted where cast. Nothing leaves the building where you're casting your vote. It's all under constant surveillance. And then do a count and one day election with very, 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 very thin opportunities to vote remotely for very well documented reasons, the people that have to vote remotely, and allowing the military's vote to be cast remotely and brought in play in a timely manner. There's a number of logistical things that have to be worked through, which can be done, but they aren't in place right now. So with all of that in mind, could you push back the elections 1 year? That's probably at least realistic. In reality, though, I don't think it'll be a year. There's always been in place a undercurrent of moving the elections to the spring and not the fall. The date we use in the fall right now, Farmer's Almanac and other things, that's the date that is what they call the slaughter day, that you don't want to keep alive till the next year to continue to breed, grow, etc. We want to move them to a different time of the year, and I think that could be part of what's in play here. So would we hold the paused election like we just pick up right exactly where we left off? No, because you got to correct the problems from the primaries. So you need more months. Do we do a compressed opportunity to get on the ballot, run a campaign, get in the vote, get through the primary process, get on the general ballot? Yeah, could very well be the case. Might actually be healthy. Could you hold those elections in a year? I think you could. Is that the ideal time? Or with everything in play, would it be better to hold it back, say, a year and a half? Uh, I think that personally, that would be better. A year and a quarter, now you're in the dead of winter, hurts certain parts of the country. I don't think that's fair. So I think there's some discussion, trade-offs, everything else about when that could happen. You may have to run some special elections because certain people are going to get taken out of office within the criminal arrest complaints, etc. Or they may want to step out of office because they know what's coming. So that could be in play. And there's other stuff in play. Brunson case is DOA right now. It's sitting on the shelf. Could that be revitalized? We're actually in the process of something that could put it right back front and center, but hasn't yet. Nobody should get ahead of the game. Don't be skipping around, get skippy on us as though it's already done, because it isn't. Don't tell me what's going on it. I know as much as anybody, and it's not being acted upon in any way, shape, or form. So cut the bullshit. But we do think that there is a valid angle that revives that relatively quickly. Is it in play? Not quite yet, but we're close. We'll see what happens. So my personal best guess, once we pause, it's a year and a half. The date of the pause, I think it's that last week of October. I'm on record saying that. Could it be sooner? Absolutely. Could it be later? Yes. How sure am I that we're going to see a pause related to the implementation of whatever happens on the midterms 2026? I'm in the 99.99999 percentile. And for cause, it's not just an arbitrary, educated guess completely. There's some questions on the timing, and the president, his team behind him, within the military component, are not telegraphing with precision exactly what they're going to do. So take a breath. We're all in this together. Is the storm going to Category 7 in the next month? No. Is it going to Category 7 in the next 3 months? No. You might think it is when he pauses the election, but we're not to the worst of it because there's other things in play globally, including overturning elections for half the peoples on planet Earth who have people in power over them who are not the will of the people because of election fraud. This is a much bigger deal than just the United States.
Thank you very much. But folks, Category 3 to 7, you have all that we just heard about the delay, the pause in elections, and what will need to take place to restore that. And you've got all that happening among other battles we're fighting, and that comprises your 3 to 7 in the Category 7 in 2027. Juan, I want to ask you about President Trump. We discussed this. I'd like you to bring it to the forefront on this broadcast right now. In 2016, we had a victory. In 2020, we had our election stolen, but you'll comment on that. Commander-in-Chief operating in part out of Mar-a-Lago. We have 2024 victory, and now the president's messaging 2028. What's happening with that messaging, 2028? And is President Trump a second, third, or fourth term should he run again? Which would it be and why?
Well, of course, I've passed around a lot. And by the way, credit where credit's due. The person that really pointed this out the most effectively first, I was aware of it, but hadn't really pressed hard. Professor Clements made a big deal, a couple of the presentations all the way back to last February at the bond conference that I did, which was all private, was not public, down there in Nevada. I had about 100 of the top people in the country on some of these issues come in, and we had a conclave concerning this. But he pointed out this meme, which President Trump showed, I think, literally at every single rally that he did, showing that the immigration crisis reached its lowest point of illegals coming into the country in that mid to late March period of 2020. It also, in the lower right-hand corner, it says that President Trump's lowest approval rating was also in this time. But in the lower right-hand corner, something bizarre. It says or that Trump resigns the presidency, and it has an arrow that goes up to exactly that area there at the tail end of March of 2020. Trump resigns the presidency. What's that about? Trump resigns the presidency, really? And yet he went all the way to January 20th, 2021 as president. So pretty wild to say that, he's not operating as a president, unless you look at it in the light that I've described to your listeners. President Trump of the country and puts on his commander-in-chief hat, which, is military and is aimed externally at threats foreign, not domestic. Now, what he told you when he did the state or the address to the nation the other day on Thursday night was that China had attacked us. So a attack on elections by international law is a weapon of mass destruction. It is categorized exactly the same as a nuclear bomb, a chemical weapon, a biological weapon. These are all weapons of mass destruction, including digital, by the way. A digital attack is a weapon of mass destruction. We've seen several attacks on pipeline systems, which could cut off the flow of oil and gas, and people in portions of the country that rely on that for heat. You could literally have people dying from these cutoffs of energy supply that are done remotely, digitally, and attacks on our energy infrastructure, electricity grids, pipelines, all sorts of things. So a digital attack is technically, if it's waged from a foreign location by foreign actors, even if there's collusion by domestic actors, it is the use of a weapon of mass destruction, which then triggers national security responses. In placing the country in a national security emergency, as he did March 13th of 2020, and then building that out, this meme saying he resigns the presidency is actually accurate. Trump never had it removed. If he didn't want that said, why didn't he have it removed from the presentation at all these rallies he did over and over and over again, including when he had these Patton-esque type presentations? He would walk off the back of the stage at the conclusion of a rally at a couple of these locations, and the curtains would be pulled back. He'd walk down the steps like the scene in Patton. And they would, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to apologize. I can't block out calls, and I had an incoming call here. So had to send it to outer space. But he would walk off the stage at the back of these presentations, and what you would see was an American flag, just like in the movie Patton, except for one thing. The stars were blacked out. Now, the reason that's important is because it's a warning in the language of flags, the language of semaphore, which I've told this audience and many others, the president is using as his communication system to patriots and to other countries. Right there in the open. All presidents have certain things that their friends and buddies know. This is how I'm going to communicate secret messages right out in the open. Trump's is the language of flags. In the language of flags, blacked out stars mean you're in occupied territory. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust anything they say as being genuine. Challenge anybody and beware that you're in occupied territory. They breach the gates. They're on the ground with us. How many traitors have been exposed? Treasonous persons, un-American persons over the last several years as this drama is played out to the public. Many. And so Trump, while he appears, based on what he said, he resigned the presidency, has been operating as the commander in chief. We're already in a declared national emergency. And by the way, by the laws that were invoked when he signed that national security emergency, Congress has 365 and a quarter days to overturn and revoke um, uh, a national security emergency, which the president would declare moving into the commander-in-chief role. National emergency. If Congress, with a two-thirds vote, both by the House and the Senate, a two-thirds or greater vote, if they haven't revoked that national security act, they cannot, in the interest of protecting the country, and until he stops the national security emergency, it stays in play. Biden couldn't dismiss it, end it. Congress couldn't after that 365 and a quarter days. So the only person is Trump, or if he's not alive or functional, then the three generals that run the NORAD Cheyenne Mountain system. It's actually 100 facilities or more, but the primary is Cheyenne Mountain in our nuclear deterrent response and beyond. So when Trump does what he's about to do regarding elections, it's not declaring a national security emergency. It's enunciating, clarifying, expanding it to include stopping false election. And so with a potential crime against the people, sealing the deal on fraudulent primaries and like that. So when he does that, it's just an extension of an already existent declared national emergency, and nothing Congress can do can stop him because that's already passed. That's why when we say trust the plan, you have to understand there's aspects of it that aren't fully understood, even by very connected people. And when he did that, it was still during his first term in office. His first term was interrupted with all sorts of mischief, including the Russia stuff, and trying to impeach him and move him out of office. The reality is he wasn't able to actually govern appropriately as his elected position would allow him to do because of this interference, both domestically with frauds, with the Russiagate stuff, and globally with the China interference and like that, and interference including in the upcoming election. Therefore, if he decides to run again 2028, wouldn't be his third term. It would be his second term, because even this last election, 2024, was held in an environment where we're in a national security emergency. And there's other aspects of it that he didn't concede the first election. He didn't agree that Biden won. He didn't give up the nuclear command and control, which I've talked extensively about previously. So with all that in mind, even this latest election is theater and staging while we got to the right position to do the rest of the fight back. But I thought, but I understood, but everything, they said this and that. Yeah, you're in a wartime condition. Deception is part of war. Get over it. Okay, get over it. Including to our enemies, even friends, internal. And many believe the propaganda. We probably would have had a civil war already had he done certain things. So he had to try and give people the understanding, we're Nazi occupied France. Operate accordingly while we fight back to get to a position to actually physically engage and have a prayer other than just guerrilla actions here and there to thwart their activities. You are in a wartime condition right now. That's a fact. Everything you see around you reinforces that. That's a fact. Get over it. And on the fight back, the pivot point really was Fauci. And we get into the rest of the stuff from there. So there you go.
Thank you, Juan. I know we're into approaching a second hour here. I want to move us into an area that you have discussed with me 2 and 3 years ago on and off camera, and I'm sure it's been raised throughout the podcast that you're lending your time to. But now that I have you here, and I just got a text from some very important people that are in my circle, and I'm glad they did that because I want to raise this question. All right. Nasara Gasara, I know it's like, it's important because we're encroaching upon new phases of economic change with the Federal Reserve partially being moved into the Treasury, with the president talking about potentially no need for federal income tax down the line, and a lot of narratives out there. Elon Musk's high universal income and everything in between. But Nasara Gasara, I have a copy of the 100-page bill and all that noise in there. In my opinion, and I'll turn it over to you, Juan, to boldly put it in place on the record that I can share with everyone to put the issue to bed. In my opinion, certain aspects of Nasara Gasara are unfolding, and certain things we seemingly are going to unfold. But the entire Nasara Gasara, you've been well on the record saying, and the RV, which is the revaluation of the dinar, the zim, and the dong and others. Clarify all of that for our viewers. Of course, there's going to be a revaluation of currencies. After all, look what's happening with the dollar, and we don't have time to get into that right now. But is everyone going to become a millionaire overnight with their dinar, their zim, and so forth? And Nasara Gasara, are some elements true and some elements not true? Please break it down for us. I know you've done this before, but we've got a new audience and we've got a raised awareness and a lot of division in the podcaster space on this very subject. Can you help us out, sir?
Well, first off, it's inaccurate to say that we're going to move the Federal Reserve into the Treasury. The Federal Reserve is a private banking club cabal, and it's a wing of the International Reserve System being run out of the City of London, and their basal operations out of Switzerland, things like that. The reality is that we are reestablishing the Treasury authorities and obligations constitutionally, and going to a Treasury-based monetary system as opposed to a international reserve system. We don't need, don't want, aren't going to have anything to do with their operations. There will be a period where both the Treasury operations and the Federal Reserve operations and the global reserve system are operating together right there in plain sight. And the comparison would be the era when Kennedy had the silver certificates for a period of time issued by the U.S. Treasury as opposed to the Federal Reserve notes. And Johnson shut that down almost immediately upon taking office, within a few days. So we're going to rarefied ground that many people have speculated on, but they don't fully understand. The Gasara Nasara, as advertised, including the dinar and all the other Zim bonds and everything else, was the other team's plan. Had Hillary won, they would have already collapsed the dollar and moved us into this other way of monetization, of holding our wealth, of converting our life energy, minutes, days, hours of our life that we work and get script for, moving our life energy into a medium of trade, which was these reserve notes, Federal Reserve notes. And by the way, with all of their wonky occult imagery all through the dollar bill, and prophetic stuff, even the Twin Towers being showed, if you fold the bills right and all that other. It's quite bizarre. We're not going to be run by this globalista uh, uh, here within our country, and we're taking that back. That's why I say honest money. They're a half a footstep behind honest elections. And it was hijacked through fraud. The people who participated in hijacking control of our currency here in America, in collusion with, literally, demons, Luciferians in nature, and specifically as those various orders exist. We're moving away from that, but for a period of time, they'll run concurrently. Uh, there are aspects of the things that are going to happen, which some people could interpret as an implementation of Gesara Nasara, but not completely so. It's just like within the senior executive service operations for continuity in government between elected administrations, which is what their uh, authorities are that they work under, their mission statement. The reality is the superseding organization that actually handles continuity in government and had pre-existing authorities which have not been overturned, even though they tried to usurp them, is NORAD, which is what the president is operating in and through, and reestablishing constitutional government here in America. And the Constitution says that the Treasury will mint gold and silver coin, and that is the currency that is used for all debts, public and private. Not this reserve currency, which is based on a bankrupt and a bankruptcy operation against America. So the Zim bond, the dinar, that's somebody else's rules. In fact, it's like saying, we're going to play football today. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of football? Are we playing NFL type football or college football? The rules are close, but they are different. Are we playing flag football or tag, like we might do in junior high or high school? Are we playing European football? Is it rugby or is it soccer? They all call those football. The rules vary in all of them. And the players that have the whole Gesara, Nasara, Zimbond, dinar thing in their sights are saying that by international law, these promises made by treasonous traitors within the intelligence, primarily in the US case CIA, in collusion with other intelligence agencies, did these deals into Iraq and other countries. And at the time they did it, they promised that they were going to pay back, according to certain rules, all of those monies. Okay. Well, it was done through fraud against the American people. And it was done based on somebody else's rules within the international reserve currency systems. Does that obligate the Treasury? Does it obligate the U.S. to those frauds? No. In fact, let them pay it all off. What they've done is they've put in place, beyond even the dinar and everything else, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that are already printed, that are valid Federal Reserve notes, that actually have numbers that are ready to go, what we call on ledger. In other words, within the internationally recorded paper currency in circulation around the world. So they have a system ready to go with money pre-printed, which was intended to flood countries around the world. Remember, the dollar is traded all over the world, even to the exclusion of the local currencies as being good as gold. So within the Federal Reserve and the International Reserve System, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars were printed, pallets and pallets. And you have no idea. A pallet has 100 million on it. They have half pallets and stuff like that, but a full pallet's $100 million. So 10 pallets is a billion. Okay. They have trillions and trillions and trillions printed and sitting in countries all over the world, that the plan was to flood the markets all over the world with those dollars, break the confidence in the dollar with that, not through the banks, but on the black market where nobody wanted a dollar. And then to force the world, because of this attack, counterfeiting, which wasn't counterfeit, the world's going to have to go to a digital currency, starting with the US. And they had a plan to go to a digital currency and to throttle that coming in. Now, okay, you want to, look, supply and demand. If suddenly all these people holding dinar and zim bonds are gatrillionaires, they're all going to fly their own 747. They're all buying a 50,000 acre ranch. They all have a plan. The plan was you have to have some kind of a charitable operation, help veterans, feed the population. They all have great stuff. You race to the bank at the appointed hour when somebody, gives the magic go code. And then if you get there in time, you're somehow going to be able to get monetized your thing. If all your paperwork's correct, you're going to get deposits in your account, and you're going to be able to go out and do that. The reality is, if you suddenly flood the market with all of this digital currency at the same time over a period of a day or two, now supply and demand, the price of a 747 go from 50 million to 5 billion. Why? Because there's only so many 747s. And then even if you get your 747, what's the cost to maintain it? And if everybody's got all this money being thrown at them, who's going to be around to want to work to maintain it? It's not realistic in the way the world actually works. So what happens is you got conned. That's the reality of it. And until you've been conned by a really good con man, it's hard to grasp. It's painful. And a lot of the people involved, just like in any Ponzi scheme, is you get, somebody's bought in, they got some money, they're going to reinvest it because they got to get more. The greed factor comes in. And then as you get to the last moments of a Ponzi scheme, all the key players have their money and they're out. Yep. The rest of the people who put their reputation on the line amongst their friends and buddies to join in, when they go to do the final flip, where's the guys that put this whole thing together? You're the one holding the bag. You're the one who's used your personal credit. But you don't realize those early guys, they were colluding. They were working together. That's what's been going on behind the scenes in these areas. I just had a conversation, I think it was yesterday, the day before, with somebody who is been physically in the room with an unimaginable amount of dollars on pallets, and just hard to even discuss. And when the discussions were happening, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was discussion of Federal Reserve System buying back these pallets of cash, putting the digital online on Ledger at 70 cents on the dollar on those pallets. Didn't happen. And it looked very close, very, very connected people working, including inside Treasury, to help pull it off. But they didn't happen. There's a handful of pallets that we have already purchased back. I don't think there's very many left that would validly be repurchased. The rest of them are what we call M0. They're not on Ledger, and the serial numbers are not on Ledger. So technically, they can't be traded through the international banking system. For all the promises, they were negotiating at 50 cents on the dollar. Supposedly China, I think it was true, was trying to buy up pallets at 30 cents on the dollar, thinking that they could hold them against the U.S. to be included in debts. The number that has been within what happened even in the last few days was 5%, and 3 offered. So they're offering 3% of the face value of a pallet with $100 million on it. Yeah, because in reality, it's a game. They're playing with these people. They never intend to honor them from within the U.S. Treasury system and the International Reserve System. See how that plays. When you start putting it out there, go ahead and buy your dinar. Use that currency to do it. What's it going to be worth? But if you want to talk about international obligations within the way they want to play football, yeah, you're obligated. You better pay that back. What happens to the value of these Federal Reserve notes as we come online with gold-backed U.S. Treasury notes? How's that game going to play? America's going to come out on top. And what's it going to buy? Even at a fraction of a cent. And by the way, what's the situation for those people that are sitting on those pallets? They have to have controlled environments. They involve huge areas, security, cameras, everything else, access. At some point, they're sitting on a boat anchor out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Okay, of how's that going to work? They're in trouble. We're not in trouble. Our system isn't in trouble. Go trade it on the international markets. The gold-backed treasury dollar is going to look fantastic. Gold and silver are going to look fantastic. So it doesn't play against us. It plays for us. The real issue is, are you going to get caught? Well, I was thinking about another conversation I just had. A person has sold some significant properties. Should they put it in the stock market? Well, if they put it in the stock market, how are they going to get paid? The obligations within the locations where they would trade it in aren't to pay them back in treasury notes, to pay them back in Federal Reserve notes. So if you have a crisis, the crisis is you might double or triple your value in the stock market, but then you get paid back with currency that's going down in value and have a tax obligation on a capital gain. Seriously? This is maybe that moment, where you rethink that. There might be some mining stocks and other stuff that could make sense, but you're in a perilous moment. And having things that have real value, it doesn't have to be gold or silver. It might be tractors, something within an industry that you have influence and control over. But it is a dangerous moment. You got to think on your feet. And the Gassara and Nasara thing is part of somebody else's game. I think you have to be very careful not to get caught up in a game and rules that are about to get wiped off the table with what Trump's about to do and doing.
Thank you, Juan. The category 3 to 7 that transpires but largely in 2027. You're on the record. I don't have the paraphrase or quote in front of me, so I won't do it much justice, but you know what you said, that what's to come, the pain that's to come yet is going to be felt very heavily in the area of the financial arena. The 3 to 7 space, Cat 3 to Cat 7, presumably 2027, that period of time, that level of concern, is that level of concern about the economy? Is that level of concern about the nuclear devices that have been stolen and not located, and or other retaliatory effects as things heat up in the justice? Is it a combination of all those things that escalate us from a 3 to a 7? I don't know if my question's clear, but that's the best way I could phrase it.
Well, I think for the people, for your mental gymnastics, if pausing the election is somewhere around a 4, and these are arbitrary. I mean, sure. Some things may hit certain areas and certain populations harder than others. Mm-hmm. Some places might not even know there's an issue for the most part, because they're insulated enough from all of these financial and political things. But within the political storm to come, the global storm to come, you pause the election here in America, and the reverberations out across the world are almost unimaginable. Why would pausing elections in the U.S. have impact across the world? Because in the course of doing that, you're going to have a shift in the power base, political power base, business power base, who's a winner, who's a loser, etc. That's going to take some time to build and intensify and focus. And because it's going after the people who've got into power through fraud, through treasonous alliances, not just in America, but other parts of the world, it's going to be very disruptive, including into the economic business finance world. As we work through that, it probably continues to intensify post announcement of a pause. And then as it gets more developed, as you see people going to Gitmo and the reporting and the disclosure of alliances and nation state level chest beating. How'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Who in your country was behind this? On both sides, all sides, including here in America. It, you know, it's like the Allies plowing through Paris and the Nazis retreating before them. Don't stick your head up out of the basement. You might get fragged by either side. There's a moment where you just the best thing you can do is get the hell out of the way. You know, the Bible says a wise man sees trouble and gets out of the way. Okay, well, trouble's coming. How do you get out of the way? How are you exposed? What kind of a job do you have? How's the money flow to you? How do you feed your family? How do you keep gas in the tank, get the mortgage paid? And you kind of do the best you can to be prepared to weather it as best you can, and then be viable on the far side, and not overextend yourself at the wrong moment. You know, try to get greedy or something like that. And there's other places where exactly the right angle, and some people will do it, will be to gamble on some certain thing, and they come through the far side and they look like geniuses. It's as personal as God's guidance in each individual. Are you on the right side of history? Are you on the right side of history from a divine perspective? Because a lot of things that looked genius and smart and alliances are going to look pretty dumbass in a, you know, divine perspective. And I think that that's much of what's about to happen in the world, that God himself is intervening in the affairs of men. That's the biblical history. God stepping in and disrupting all the wise man's plans, including to take over the world and to conquer the world and control the world and move it into an entire slave planet. So prayer required, you know, and you can't look to just any guru. I can give you ideas and thoughts about what is afoot, but is there advice for the single mother living in an apartment in New Jersey? That's like a God thing. Your exact circumstances and your best move to get out of the way of what's coming is very personal. Do you have relatives? Do you have another place you should be? Is there a different job? How would I know that? And conversely, one of the people that I was talking with probably a month and a half ago, runs a manufacturing company. It's one of the most important manufacturing companies on planet Earth, making engines for huge industrial operations that it's just stunning when you actually get into the weeds on it. The things that person can and should do and needs to do, both for their board and the shareholders, and as a critical infrastructure location to several governments around the world. It's different. So, prayer required, but change is coming, and it's going to be very, very gripping. And you need, for each person individually, some kind of guidance that can't just come from a guru. You might be able to get some advice, some thoughts, some input, but ultimately the decision you make, you're going to have to own, and you won't be able to blame it on anybody. God can provide a path for each person present, that's outside even the wisdom of men. You can make a calculation. Proverbs says that, we make the plans, but God blesses them. And so if you want your plans to be blessed, you better make that final consultation. Okay, here's what intelligence, reason, my history tell me I should do next. Please, God, if I'm off track, help me out here. And that, uh, God, if you ask for bread, will he give you a stone? If you ask for a fish, will he give you a serpent? He's a good God. He wants you to communicate, and he gives answers to each man or woman. Um, Come to him in faith. Please help me. I trust you, God. Nobody else. What's my next move? And, I mentioned metals a lot, but that may not be the right answer for many people in this audience. There's something else that's a more secure route based on your history, your location, your skill sets, etc. It's a personal thing. So,
U.S. Navy and aircraft carriers have moved into battle formation along the U.S. West Coast, Pacific Coast, and throughout the Mediterranean. Be ready for events that expose the cabal deep state agenda. Prepare for an unprecedented moment in history, where a series of events will bring to light the truths hidden by the deep state and awaken the masses. Here's what to expect. A lockdown will be implemented to ensure everyone remains safely at home to witness these crucial revelations. This is essential for the security of all during this monumental moment. A test and review of all occurrences will be conducted. Given the potential implications at both national and global levels, it is vital that everything aligns with established protocols. Only a select few are aware of the precise timing of these events. For security reasons, this information is being kept strictly confidential. Expect 10 days of communication darkness, during which the mainstream media will be blacked out. During this period, the following will occur. The Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, will air an 8-hour video, replayed 3 times a day for the duration of the 10 days. We will receive 7 trumpets in the form of EBS text messages on our phones, instructing us to tune into our televisions. During this time, our phones will only function for emergency 911 calls, and a military encrypted signal app will be made available. Television broadcasts will only display 3 explanatory movies on a continuous loop, covering topics such as arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia, and more. Internet and ATMs will be down during this period. After the 10 days of darkness, we will transition to a new quantum internet system, which promises enhanced security and freedom. It is advised to stock up on at least 3 weeks' worth of food, water, medicine, generators, and other essential supplies. The Starlink internet system will be operational by the end of the month. Special teams are coordinating this historic event, working tirelessly to upgrade the EBS and ensure the utmost security for all citizens. Following these 10 days, the world will be forever changed. Financial enslavement will end, and new currencies will emerge, including the gold-backed U.S. note in the United States. The old systems governing education, finance, healthcare, trade, and commerce will be dismantled and replaced, ushering in a new era of peace and prosperity for all. What's happening right now? The global asset revaluation has received the final handshake through the primary settlement nodes. The emergency continuity protocols have been officially signed off on. The old guard's access to the SWIFT lines has been completely severed, and the QFS routing protocols are taking over. The global financial reset is happening right now. The mainstream media is either completely silent or spinning total nonsense to keep everyone looking the other way, while the back-end ledgers are locking in the transition to the new asset-backed reality. The transition teams are already in place at the key federal and international hubs, and the asset transfers are taking place in real time as we speak. The oversight committees in the military have officially taken over the continuity checkpoints.
Thursday, August 6th. The event should be about 3 days based on the Bay of Pigs, then 10-day shutdown of Earth and activation of military BS to TVs and radios worldwide. At the same time, all governments worldwide will be stood down as well as further arrests. We will then be having Jassara blockchain elections. We will be having governments 10% the size of what they are currently, all new people. Quantum Jassara, aka Trumpsara, quantum financial system, and quantum physics. Quantum internet, everything is going quantum. Nasara states, rainbow treasury notes, backed by precious metals, adding quantum Starlink and ISO 20022, internationally regulated USA coins, also backed by metals. QVS, blockchain no longer like the way we do it. Quantum internet, the internet is rebooted. No more Microsoft, everything wiped. The current internet is Operation Mockingbird. Same as TV, newspapers, etc., will not be anywhere near the same. One news channel, etc., all media, papers is owned by the Mossad, all being removed. All private intelligence owned by the UK royals to be removed. No more Mossad, Five Eyes, CIA, etc. Only intelligence will be military intelligence. MOAB equals Global Currency Reset, 1950s, Precious Metal Standard, plus Quantum Jassara, plus D-Class of everything.
See, what we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know, but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood-style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Fry. 7 Aug. 2026 Executive Order 2026-1947 Israel. The pharmaceutical industry was given exactly 90 days to comply with the declassification of FQFS is real. The system is alive and it knows who you are. You can't pretend your way into this future. QFS doesn't work on promises written on paper or political titles. It runs on the truth that has been proven by quantum mechanics. And everyone who tried to get rich by stealing, lying, cheating, or enslaving others is being locked out right now. The gate is electronic, but the decision is spiritual. This is what they were afraid would happen. Your record is clean if your heart is clean. That's how things are now. Right now, redemption centers are filtering millions of people. Some are getting the green light in seconds. Some people are being turned down without saying anything. Money isn't the difference. It's how often it happens. You are first in line if you lived with honor and the world punished you for it. Your wealth is already being made if you stood up when it was dangerous to speak. This is the time of quiet power, and your balance is coming back. Ustins are more than just money. They show that your pain was recorded, your debt was fake, and your energy was taken. The QFS is fixing everything, and it's doing it faster than anyone thought possible. Debts go away. Accounts shine. The numbers you see are real. They are reparations. But most people still don't see this. This system is alive. It looks, it learns, it keeps things safe. No one can hack it, take it over, or pay it off. The old lords of finance are banging on a door that isn't there anymore. Their vaults are empty. Their networks have been taken apart. The system they used to control is now erasing their names. This isn't just a change in money, it's a change in your soul, and you're in it. So don't waste time trying to explain it to people who still believe it. Let the truth come out in their fear and your calm. Set the standard, be the link. Historic bond redemption 2026. For decades, the world's elites hid original gold-backed promissory notes in secret vaults. The locks break today. These papers are not worth anything. They are bombs. What is on the way? Kings, emperors, and wartime treasurers issued bonds that were backed by metal, not ink. From Imperial China, dragon bonds. German debt promises before the war. Victory notes from the Pacific. Not paid. All of these are legal under international law. Their total claim is much bigger than the Fake debt machine from the 21st century. Why were they stop the Bretton Woods cartel change the world to printable money? If they had honored real bonds, the paper empire would have fallen apart in one morning. So the cartel killed the records and hid the discredited holders. The holders fight back today. Royal families, tribal councils, sovereign trusts, and military guardians are all offering original works for redemption. The paperwork is checked line by QFS and military courts. Central bankers can't stop time. The chain reaction, once even a small amount is paid, the lie of debt slavery falls apart. The price of gold goes through the roof. Fiat money melts. Governments need to show the world their balance sheets again. Humanitarian megafunds get their power from real value, not fake money. Warning: counterfeit scammers sell digital files that don't have any history. If the paper doesn't have a seal parchment and a living witness, it's trash. Do not take anything else. Last flash historic bonds are like nuclear bombs aimed at the heart of the deep state bank network. Redemption means the end of central bank rule and the beginning of an economy run by the people. Wait a minute. When the first payment goes through, the blackout curtains drop and the biggest transfer of wealth in history begins. Tick-tock. Truth that bursts out can't be stopped. The cartel is in a tight spot. The doors to the vault are opening right now.
Saturday, July 25th. Leaked Space Force internal memo, July 25th, 2026, Tier 4B. Classification, TSC SCI, downgraded to unclassified per EO 202. Originator, USS Space Force Medical Operations Command. Subject, Global Deployment Order, Holographic Regeneration Units.
Effective 25 July 2026, 600 UTC, all subterranean medical restoration facilities under USSF jurisdiction are authorized for Phase III civilian integration. Total active sites, 4,512. Repeat, 4,512 facilities are now operational. I served 11 years in Space Force medical operations. I was stationed at 3 of these facilities. What I am about to tell you is not speculation. I watched it happen with my own eyes. They are quantum restoration chambers built 200 to 600 feet underground, connected by a magnetic rail system that does not appear on any public transit map. Each facility contains between 12 and 40 holographic regeneration pods. The pods do not use drugs. They do not use radiation. The pharmaceutical industry spent $4.7 billion in lobbying last year alone to prevent this moment. They failed. The media blackout you are witnessing right now is their final move. If they cannot stop the technology, they will try to stop you from knowing it exists. But 4,512 facilities cannot be hidden forever. The personnel who operated them are speaking. The families who were healed are speaking. The silence is breaking. The pilot who flew the pods, a 2022 confession, I never knew what was inside the containers. For 6 years, I was told they were classified medical equipment for forward operating bases. I flew them from a private airstrip in Nevada to 14 different locations across the continental United States. I never asked questions, until the night one of the containers opened. I was a contract cargo pilot for a logistics company that doesn't officially exist. My clearance level was TSSCI with a compartmented access briefing I had to re-sign every 90 days. My job was simple. Fly the C-17 from point A to point B. Don't look at the cargo. Don't ask about the cargo. Don't talk about the cargo. The containers were always the same. Matte black, 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, 3 feet tall, sealed with biometric locks. They weighed exactly 847 pounds each. I flew between 2 and 6 per trip. In 6 years, I made 214 deliveries to locations that did not appear on any FAA chart. We landed on runways that were built into mountainsides, inside canyons, and on platforms that descended underground after we touched down. On March 14, 2022, during a delivery to a facility in northern Arizona, one of the containers malfunctioned during offload. The biometric seal cracked. The lid shifted 3 inches. What I saw inside changed everything I thought I knew about medicine. It was a pod, smooth, white, with a translucent canopy. Inside the canopy, there was a soft blue glow like light was alive inside it. Along the base were symbols I didn't recognize and a digital panel that read, QRU7/cellular. Restoration Unit Batch 2019-4. Quantum Restoration Unit, Batch 2019. I had been flying these since 2016. That means they had been manufacturing them for at least 3 years before my first delivery, and I had moved over 900 of them across the country. The ground crew saw the breach. Within 30 seconds, 6 armed personnel surrounded the container. They resealed it. A man in a gray suit approached me and said, "Captain, you saw a piece of medical imaging equipment. It is not operational. It is being decommissioned. Do you understand?" I said yes, but I didn't understand, because decommissioned equipment doesn't glow. Decommissioned equipment doesn't have active digital panels, and decommissioned equipment doesn't get delivered to underground facilities by pilots with the highest security clearance in the country. After that night, I started paying attention. I logged every delivery, every coordinate, every facility. They paid me $1.8 million in separation compensation and made me sign a 30-year NDA. But NDAs don't survive declassification orders. And Executive Order 2020-61947 just declassified everything I ever flew. So here I am, telling you what I carried, telling you where I took it.
Friday, August 7th, 2026. Initiated by a court order, the Michigan investigation team obtained forensic access to a DS-200 tabulator, the machine that counts the votes. A Telit 4G wireless chip manufactured in Taiwan was discovered embedded into the motherboard. The voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data. Cybersecurity expert Colonel Phil Waldron, here is some of the treachery we uncovered in the 2020 general election, were that 5 key states all stopped counting votes at the same time in these key battleground states. These were all where Dominion machines, ES&S machines, and Smartmatic software were used. So when the vote counting stopped, and this has been noted in other countries as well, President Trump was significantly ahead. When reporting and counting resumed, a massive spike occurred that favored Joe Biden. Report: Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion Smartmatic voting system switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. The Dominion voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data.
Dead deep state scientist shows up at Mar-a-Lago to warn Trump about clones, but turns out to be a clone. On Telegram Mirror, clones everywhere. A deep state scientist claiming to have worked at a Pacific Northwest cloning laboratory approached the front gate of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last week and told Secret Service agents he carried information that could only be delivered to Trump personally. An administration source reported the man claimed to be, and exactly resembled, deceased NEWUPDATE researcher Jason Thomas. Thomas vanished from his Wakefield, Massachusetts home on December 13, 2025, and his waterlogged body was recovered from Lake Quannapowitt on March 17, 2026. He was among several scientists whose disappearances and deaths have drawn sustained attention. When the identical man appeared at Mar-a-Lago, agents detained him. Fingerprints matched federal employment records and a 2023 DUI arrest. Agents refused access near Trump, codenamed Mogul. Weeping, Thomas begged for 1 minute with the president, saying for all mankind he had to warn of the clones. Cloning has been documented since special forces destroyed deep state labs in the Missouri Ozarks and Alaskan tundra. A strip search revealed Thomas possessed neither male nor female genitals, only smooth skin. Shocked agents heard him claim he had been forced at gunpoint and under threat to his family to work in a clone lab. White hat operators from the earlier raids later arrived at the Tampa Secret Service office with Army Rangers, Special Forces, and Delta Force. A tense standoff followed as military and Secret Service agents pointed weapons at one another. A directive understood to come from Trump ordered the Secret Service to release Thomas to the military. At Fort Bliss, the man was told he was a clone of the original Thomas. He denied it, saying he had worked at a lab in Northern California, Oregon, or Washington, but that his memory of the location had been wiped. He insisted clones of Trump already exist, and that he knew how an attack on the president and his family would unfold, seeking amnesty and immunity. Sources confirmed the classic clone markers: flat feet, missing molars, and no genitals. He still refused to accept the FBI WHISTLEBLOWER who broke the code. THEY planned Trump's removal before the inauguration. My name is redacted. My security clearance is still active. And I'm risking everything to tell you what I saw in the classified vaults beneath the Hoover Building. I was there. May 2, 2017, 4 days after Kamai was fired. I watched them open the file. I watched them name it. I watched them predicate it on a lie. The investigation was called Oxford, not because of grammar, because it was designed to be invisible, hidden in plain sight. A code name that meant nothing to outsiders but everything to those who knew. The premise was simple. Trump was a Russian asset. Trump fired Kamai to obstruct the Russia investigation. Therefore, Trump must be removed. But hear what the declassified memos don't tell you. I saw the real memo, the one that was redacted. The one they didn't want you to see. It stated, the goal is not truth. The goal is removal. Those were the exact words, not my interpretation. Their words. Typed by FBI Counterintelligence Chief William Priestap. Approved by James Baker. Signed off by Andrew McCabe. What's our goal? Truth admission or to get him to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired. SDRZOC wrote. That was the real investigation, not seeking truth, manufacturing lies. They knew the Steele dossier was garbage. I personally reviewed the spreadsheet. Every single claim was marked, unverified, internet rumor, or unable to corroborate. Igor Danchenko, Steele's primary source, Russian asset. The FBI knew it. They had suspected it for years, but they used his information anyway. Mike Flynn, they cleared him. Then they invited HIM to an interview. Then they charged him with lying in that interview. The goal was entrapment, not justice. I watched them do it. I watched them smile while they did it. The Steele dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign through her law firm. The FBI knew this, but they used it as the foundation for the entire investigation into a sitting president. This wasn't counterintelligence. This was a coup attempt, and the declassified memos are just the tip of the iceberg. The real evidence is still classified. The real conversations are still hidden. The real conspiracy is still buried. But I'm telling you, it exists. I saw it. I documented it. And when it comes out, it will shock the world. Trump was right to fire Kamai. Kamai MISHANDLED the Clinton investigation. The FBI knew it. But instead of accepting accountability, they opened a false investigation into Trump. They used the intelligence apparatus of the United States government to target a political opponent. They violated the Constitution. They violated the law. They violated their oaths, and now they're being exposed. The declassified memos are just the beginning. More is coming, much more. Within 60 days, expect major revelations. Indictments are coming. The truth is coming out. The deep state thought they were untouchable. They thought their crimes would stay hidden. They were wrong. The vaults are opening. Files are being declassified. Truth is coming. History will record this as the day the deep state fell. Oxford, exposed. FBI Corey VLED truth incoming.
Restored Republic via GC Judy note. Be ready for events that expose the cabal deep state agenda. Prepare for an unprecedented moment in history, where a series of events will bring to light the truths hidden by the deep state and awaken the masses. Here's what to expect. A lockdown will be implemented to ensure everyone remains safely at home to witness these crucial revelations. This is essential for the security of all during this monumental moment. A test and review of all occurrences will be conducted. Given the potential implications at both national and global levels, it is vital that everything aligns with established protocols. Only a select few are aware of the precise timing of these events. For security reasons, this information is being kept strictly confidential. Expect 10 days of communication darkness, during which the mainstream media will be blacked out. During this period, the following will occur. The Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, will air an 8-hour video, replayed 3 times a day for the duration of the 10 days. We will receive 7 trumpets, in the form of EBS text messages on our phones, instructing us to tune into our televisions. During this time, our phones will only function for emergency 911 calls. and a military encrypted signal app will be made available. Television broadcasts will only display 3 explanatory movies on a continuous loop, covering topics such as arrests, tribunals, fraud, corruption, pedophilia, and more. Internet and ATMs will be down during this period. After the 10 days of darkness, we will transition to a new quantum internet system, which promises enhanced security and freedom. It is advised to stock up on at least 3 weeks' worth of food, water, medicine, generators, and other essential supplies. The Starlink internet system will be operational by the end of the month. Special teams are coordinating this historic event, working tirelessly to upgrade the EBS and ensure the utmost security for all citizens. Following these 10 days, the world will be forever changed, financial enslavement will end, and new currencies will emerge, including the gold-backed U.S. note in the United States. The old systems governing education, finance, healthcare, trade, and commerce will be dismantled and replaced, ushering in a new era of peace and prosperity for all. What's happening right now? The global asset revaluation has received the final handshake through the primary settlement nodes. The emergency continuity protocols have been officially signed off on. The old guard's access to the SWIFT lines has been completely severed and the QFS routing protocols are taking over. The global financial reset is happening right now. The mainstream media is either completely silent or spinning total nonsense to keep everyone looking the other way while the back-end ledgers are locking in the transition to the new asset-backed reality. The transition teams are already in place at the key federal and international hubs, and the asset transfers are taking place in real time as we speak. The oversight committees in the military have officially taken over the continuity checkpoints and the deployment is being prepared for public announcements. Friday, August 7, 2026, the event should be about 3 days, then a 10-day shutdown of Earth and activation of military EBS to TVs and radios worldwide. At the same time all governments worldwide will be stood down as well as further arrests. We will then be having Jazara blockchain elections. We will be having govs 10% the size of what they are currently. All new people. QVS, blockchain no longer like the way we do it. Quantum Internet. The Internet is rebooted. No more Microsoft. Everything wiped. The current Internet is Operation Mockingbird. Same as TV, newspapers etc. will not be anywhere near the same. One news channel etc. all media/papers is owned by the Mossad, all being removed. All private intelligence owned by the UK royals to be removed. No more Mossad, Five Eyes, CIA etc. only intelligence will be military intelligence. MOAB equals global currency reset, 1950s, plus precious metal standard plus quantum Jazara plus declines of everything on Earth. See President Trump CO on absolutely everything declassified by August 10th. See, what we thought we knew, but didn't really know and now are supposed to know but don't have a clue. With clones, doubles, made-up movies Hollywood style and Trump's military alliance throwing more popcorn at us, it gets so confusing. Global currency reset, Thursday, August 6, 2026. Bruce, the big call, we are looking at Sat 8, Sun 9 or Monday 10th of August. For Tier 4B, us, the Internet Group, to get notified to make redemption appointments. Bruce's Reno contact said bondholders were flying in and out of Reno to get their accounts funded. They can see money in their account but don't have access. The system is alive and IT knows who you are, you can't pretend your way into this future. QFS doesn't work on promises written on paper or political titles. It runs on the truth. Truth that has been proven by quantum mechanics. And everyone who tried to get rich by stealing, lying, cheating, or enslaving others is being locked out right now. The gate is electronic, but the decision is spiritual. This is what they were afraid would happen. Your record is clean if your heart is clean. That's how things are now. Right now, redemption centers are filtering millions of people. Some are getting the green light in seconds. Some people are being turned down without saying anything. Money isn't the difference. It's how often it happens. You are first in line if you lived with honor and the world punished you for it. Your wealth is already being made if you stood up when it was dangerous to speak. This is the time of quiet power. And your balance is coming back. USTNs are more than just money. They show that your pain was recorded, your debt was fake, and your energy was taken. The QFS is fixing everything, and it's doing it faster than anyone thought possible. Debts go away. Accounts shine. The numbers you see are real. They are reparations. But most people still don't see this. This system is alive. It looks It learns. It keeps things safe. No one can hack it, take it over, or pay it off. The old lords of finance are banging on a door that isn't there anymore. Their vaults are empty. Their networks have been taken apart. The system they used to control is now erasing their names. This isn't just a change in money, it's a change in your soul. And you're in it. So don't waste time trying to explain it to people who still believe it. Let the truth come out in their fear and your calm. Set the standard. Be the link. Show that the people have already won. Friday, August 7, 2026. Historic Bond Redemption 2026. For decades, the world's elites hid original gold-backed promissory notes in secret vaults. The locks break today. These papers are not worth anything. They are bombs. What is on the way? Kings, emperors, and wartime treasurers issued bonds that were backed by metal, not ink. From Imperial China, dragon bonds. German debt promises before the war. Victory notes from the Pacific. Not paid. All of these are legal under international law. Their total claim is much bigger than the fake debt machine from the 21st century. Why were they stopped? The Bretton Woods cartel changed the world to printable money. If they had honored real bonds, the paper empire would have fallen apart in one morning. So the cartel killed the records and hid the discredited holders. The holders fight back today. Royal families, tribal councils, sovereign trusts, and military guardians are all offering original works for redemption. The paperwork is checked line by QFS and military courts. Central bankers can't stop time. The chain reaction: once even a small amount is paid, the live debt slavery falls apart. The price of gold goes through the roof. Fiat money melts. Governments need to show the world their balance sheets again. Humanitarian megafunds get their power from real value, not fake money. Warning: counterfeit scammers sell digital files that don't have any history. If the paper doesn't have a seal, parchment, and a living witness, it's trash. Do not take anything else. Last flash: historic bonds are like nuclear bombs aimed at the heart of the deep state bank network. Redemption means the end of central bank rule and the beginning of an economy run by the people. Wait a minute. When the first payment goes through, the blackout curtains drop and the biggest transfer of wealth in history begins. Tick-tock. Truth that bursts out can't be stopped. The cartel is in a tight spot. The doors to the vault are opening right now. IMED-Bed's 3 pharmaceutical executives resigned this week. No press conference. No succession plan. Number 90-day transition. They didn't retire. They fled. Start running. Pay attention to what they're running from. Saturday, July 25, 2026. Leaked Space Force internal memo. July 25, 2026. 022. Classification: DS/SCI. Downgraded to unclassified per EO 2026 to 1947. Originator: USSF Medical Operations Command. Subject: Global Deployment Order, Holographic Regeneration Units. In 6 years, I made 214 deliveries to locations that did not appear on any FAA chart. We landed on runways that were built into mountainsides, inside canyons, and on platforms that descended underground after we touched down. On March 14, 2022, during a delivery to a facility in northern Arizona, one of the containers malfunctioned during offload. The biometric seal cracked. The lid shifted 3 inches. What I saw inside changed everything I thought I knew about medicine. It was a pod. Smooth, white, with a translucent canopy. Inside the canopy, there was a soft blue glow, like light was alive inside it. Along the base were symbols I didn't recognize and a digital panel that read, QRU7, Cellular Restoration Unit / Batch 2019-4. Quantum Restoration Unit. Batch 2019. I had been flying these since 2016. That means they had been manufacturing them for at least 3 years before my first delivery, and I had moved over 900 of them across the country. What we think we know as of Saturday, 8th of August, 2026, Friday, August 7, 2026. Dominion and Smartmatic election rigging systems. Initiated by a court order, the Michigan investigation team obtained forensic access to a DS-200 tabulator. The machine that counts the votes, a Telit 4G wireless chip manufactured in Taiwan, was discovered embedded into the motherboard. The voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data. Cybersecurity expert, Colonel Phil Waldron: here is some of the treachery we uncovered in the 2020 general election, where that 5 key states all stopped counting votes at the same time in these key battleground states. These were all Dominion machines, S&S, machines, and Smartmatic software were used. So when the vote counting stopped, and this has been noted in other countries as well, President Trump was significantly ahead. When reporting and counting resumed, a massive spike occurred that favored Joe Biden. Report: Dominion deleted 2.7 million Trump votes nationwide. Data analysis finds 221,000 Pennsylvania votes switched from President Trump to Biden. 941,000 Trump votes deleted. States using Dominion Smartmatic voting systems switched 435,000 votes from Trump to Biden. The Dominion voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data. Friday, August 7, 2026. Deep state scientist shows up at Mar-a-Lago to warn Trump about clones but turns out to be a clone. Mirror, mirror, clones everywhere. A deep state scientist claiming to have worked at a Pacific Northwest cloning laboratory approached the front gate of President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate last week and told Secret Service agents he carried information that could only be delivered to Trump personally. An administration source reported the man claimed to be, and exactly resembled, deceased Novartis researcher Jason Thomas. Thomas vanished from his Wakefield, Massachusetts home on December 13, 2025, and his waterlogged body was recovered from Lake Quinnipiac on March 17, 2026. He was among several scientists whose disappearances and deaths have drawn sustained attention. When the identical man appeared at Mar-a-Lago, agents detained him. Fingerprints matched federal employment records and a 2023 DUI arrest. Files and the death certificate, yet the man matched in every detail. He rejected proof of his death as fabricated and insisted Trump's survival depended on what he alone knew. Agents refused access near Trump, codenamed Mogul. Weeping, Thomas begged for 1 minute with the president, saying for all mankind he had to warn of the clones. Cloning has been documented since special forces destroyed deep state labs in the Missouri Ozarks and Alaskan tundra. White hat operators from the earlier raids later arrived at the Tampa Secret Service office with Army Rangers, Special Forces, and Delta Force. A tense standoff followed as military and Secret Service agents pointed weapons at one another. A directive understood to come from Trump ordered the Secret Service to release Thomas to the military. At Fort Bliss the man was told he was a clone of the original Thomas. He denied it, saying he had worked at a lab in Northern California, Oregon, or Washington but that his memory of the location had been wiped. He insisted clones of Trump already exist and that he knew how an attack on the president and his family would unfold, seeking amnesty and immunity. Sources confirmed the classic clone markers, flat feet, missing molars, and no genitals. He still refused to accept he had been created in a cloning cylinder. Friday, August 7, 2026. The FBI whistleblower WHO broke the code. They planned Trump's removal before the inauguration. My name is redacted. My security clearance is still active. And I'm risking everything to tell you what I saw in the classified vaults beneath the Hoover Building. I was there. May 2, 2017. 4 days after Comey was fired. I watched them open the file. I watched them name it. I watched them predicate it on a lie. The investigation was called Oxford, not because of grammar. Because it was designed to be invisible. Hidden in plain sight. A code name that meant nothing to outsiders but everything to those who knew. The premise was simple: Trump was a Russian asset. Trump fired Comey to obstruct the Russia investigation. Therefore, Trump must be removed. But here's what the declassified memos don't tell you: I saw the real memo. The one that was redacted. The one they didn't want you to see. It stated, "The goal is not truth. The goal is removal." Those were the exact words. Not my interpretation. Their words. Typed by FBI Counterintelligence Chief William Priestap. Approved by James Baker. Signed off by Andrew McCabe. What's our goal? Truth/admission, or to get him to lie, so we can prosecute him or get him fired. Strzok wrote. That was the real investigation. Not seeking truth. Manufacturing lies. They knew the Steele dossier was garbage. I personally reviewed the spreadsheet. Every single claim was marked, unverified, internet rumor, or unable to corroborate. Igor Danchenko, Steele's primary source. Russian asset. The FBI knew it. They had suspected it for years. But they used his information anyway. Mike Flynn. They cleared him. Then they invited him to an interview. Then they charged him with lying in that interview. The goal was entrapment, not justice. I watched them do it. I watched them smile while they did it. The Steele dossier was paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign through her law firm. The FBI knew this. But they used it as the foundation for the entire investigation into a sitting president. This wasn't counterintelligence. This was a coup attempt. And the declassified memos are just the tip of the iceberg. The real evidence is still classified. The real conversations are still hidden. The real conspiracy is still buried. But I'm telling you, it exists. I saw it. I documented it. And when it comes out, it will shock the world. Trump was right to fire Comey. Comey mishandled the Clinton investigation. The FBI knew it. But instead of accepting accountability, they opened a false investigation into Trump. They used the intelligence apparatus of the United States government to target a political opponent. They violated the Constitution. They violated the law. They violated their oaths. And now they're being exposed. The declassified memos are just the beginning. More is coming. Much more. Within 60 days, expect major revelations. Indictments are coming. The truth is coming out. The deep state thought they were untouchable. They thought their crimes would stay hidden. They were wrong. The vaults are opening. Files are being declassified. Truth is coming. History will record this as the day the deep state fell. Oxford, exposed FBI coup revealed truth incoming.
David Wilcox, who, according to my sources, it was we used to work together. He helped expose the real reason that John F. Kennedy was assassinated, which was he was trying to take control of the Federal Reserve Board and give it back to the U.S. government so that the United States could, plan to do good things for the planet, whereas the group who assassinated him had this long-term plan to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. And they operate very high-level hit squads, and my sources, in the CIA tell me this was another hit. And if the story they're putting out that he shot himself in front of the police is true, then they got to release that video. Otherwise, I won't believe it. And now we have to get to the real issue here, which is, who are these real controllers? Everyone knows that this fake President Trump is reading scripts handed to him. So who are these people? Well, I'll tell you who they are. When when I was first contacted by Asian secret societies with their hundreds of thousands of assassins, and I gave them a list of all the members of the Bilderberg, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and said this is the problem. They sent Leo Zagami over as their representative to negotiate. And then I went to Italy to meet the heads of this, what I call the Khazarian Mafia. And the person he took me to was Vincenzo Mazzara of the Black Sun Group, a so-called cavalier of the Teutonic Knights. And these people were in contact with me this week. They said they wanted to arrange a meeting with Xi Jinping, and they basically threatened all-out nuclear war unless Mazzara was made dictator of the planet Earth. And I got this directly from these people. We were communicating via Telegram, and nobody wants this, Black Sun worshipping. So Scott Ritter is quite right. Iran did win the war. And the reason Mazzara and his people contacted me is because the United States suffered its largest naval defeat since World War II. This news was immediately scrubbed from the internet, but there could be no doubt. Iran simultaneously sank 18 U.S. warships, including a carrier, the Lincoln, which had been repaired and sent back into action, and lost 6,000 sailors. Another 12,000 U.S. troops surrendered. And also Israel was hit with 2,000 missiles and is also trying to negotiate a surrender because the U.S. military refused to mobilize to fight on behalf of Israel. And the reason is that the sane people in the U.S. military and industrial establishment and the intelligence agencies know that, listen to Larry Johnson talk about what Iran has to say, and J.D. Vance. The Iranians are proposing to replace the satanic, racist state of Israel with the multi-religious, multi-ethnic state of Judea. and that they would live in peace with their neighbors, not cause eternal wars and turmoil and trouble, which is what they're doing now. They are the main source of world terrorism. And everybody knows this now. The whole world is sick and tired of it. And yet, even though J.D. Vance reached a peace deal with the Iranians, and they got their Trump to say, no, we're going to have to completely blockade them, and that led to the destruction of that task force. And he has to be removed, but we have to understand that we have to go after these Italian whack jobs who are controlling them. This is the Black Sun organization, Vincenzo Mazzaro and his other people, and we have their names and addresses, and it's time to get to the heart of the problem. We have to go after these secret controllers, not just the puppets we're seeing on our TV screens, because enough is enough. The world wants to live peacefully and as friendly neighbors and work together for projects that we all agree upon, like stopping environmental destruction, ending poverty, and turning this world into a paradise, not a dictatorship, or even worse. There is a group that is actively working for a rogue AI, and they want to replace us with robots. That's the people who want to decarbonize. We're carbon-based life. They want to replace it with silicon-based life. And it's getting to the point where we soon will not be able to distinguish robots from human beings. And they will be controlled by these vast data centers that they're rapidly building everywhere with artificial intelligence. Take a look at this film of how robots are advancing. The Chinese are saying in a couple of years we won't be able to tell the difference. So this is a moment of decision. We have to decide to fight for humanity, and we have to remove this satanic force that has been infiltrating the West for millennia. And, we're really close to final victory for the human race. Let me just check my notes to see if there's anything else I need to say here. Well, yeah, there's some news. Japan has just sold all their U.S. treasuries. I bet you didn't see that anywhere because they're faking the market. It's all an illusion at this point. Their magic money printing machine is not working. And because they lost the war in the Middle East, and because the Iranians are actively moving in, they no longer have the control of the Middle Eastern oil money. So that really was a nail in their coffin. And, there is a plan to, set good government in the West, which would start with a jubilee, public and private, and then set up a future planning agency for the West to ask people what kind of world they want to live in, what kind of future they want, how can we get there, and hire the smartest people on earth to try to make it happen in a realistic way. Not some group of people building giant data centers to replace us with robots, which they say openly. Trump, or the fake Trump, is a member of Chabad, and Chabad says openly, they've been saying it for years, they want to kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. And if you listen to the Iranians, they're saying, hey, we're not fighting against Americans, we're not fighting against Jews, we're fighting against the Epstein class, the people who torture and murder. And it's got to get kinetic. We're going to have to physically remove these people. They're not going to step aside quietly. And we need to start by replacing that fake Trump who replaced the good Trump, the real Trump, in June of 2025. He has to be removed, and J.D. Vance has to be made president, and he has to start arresting the Epstein criminals. And then we can start. And it's long overdue. But I guarantee you that no matter what they do, these people have lost. The whole world is onto them now, and so is the vast majority of the Western people. So the days when they could keep in power by pinpoint assassinating the top leaders and blackmailing the rest are over. They cannot assassinate their way out of this one. And so their only choice is to surrender and hope for truth and reconciliation. That's the only bet they have. But we're gonna finish this, and the sooner we do it, the better. We have no other choice. They're coming to kill us. We have to defend ourselves. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi Ben, similar to your other readers, I'm very glad that the KM is now defeated and the East-West deal has been made as you wrote in the last weekly report. I expect humanity's major crisis is now broadly averted. As a new era of humanity has started, can we expect no catastrophic events such as total collapse of the world economy? Although some economic troubles might remain, such as high energy prices due to production caused by the Middle East war, many countries will therefore experience significant consumer price increases. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the fact is there's plenty of energy, and when this is over, the idea of energy being expensive will end, and a lot of the hidden technology will be released. But as far as catastrophic events are concerned, it isn't quite over yet. I mean, agreement was reached with the British Commonwealth, the MI6, and the Europeans and NATO, but the group behind the fake Donald Trump and these Black Sun people are still going to try to cause a starvation crisis, and they tried to get Trump to start a nuclear war. He asked the U.S. military for the nuclear code so he could nuke Iran, and the U.S. military sensibly said no. So hopefully, we will be able to finish this. But until you see the removal of that fake Trump and the replacement of Keir Starmer in the UK, it's not quite over. Although agreement in principle has been reached, and when that happens, the era of artificial shortages will end, and everybody will be able to live like a millionaire. And this is not a pipe dream. This can be realistically done. All you need is competent economic management, which is what the West does not have now. Next question.
Hi Ben. Ben, Iran just closed the Strait of Hormuz as of last Friday. I'm not sure if it has been reopened yet. Do you know anything about this? And if it stays closed, what does that mean for the rest of the world currently?
Well, it's not closed. Okay, the Iranian oil ships are going through. The only thing it's closed for is about 800 ships controlled by the Israelis and by the U.S. Khazarian mafia. But for example, here in Japan, the price of gasoline is the same as it was before the war. So it's only a crisis for the owners of the Federal Reserve Board, but the straits are open for business, and this blockade is fake news. The U.S. does not have the ability to do that, and so it's just a lie. So they're not closed. Okay, that's the bottom line. Except for criminals, they can't get through. But Israel is surrendering, so hopefully it will be replaced by the state of Judea, and then all those ships will be able to go through. Next question.
Hi Ben, do you truly believe that China has removed their facial recognition cameras? I have difficulty in believing that because I thought China was a communist country. Is it possible they have only removed the cameras because they can now track people by other means?
Well, first of all, if you have one of these, this is a listening device with a GPS that tracks you all the time and listens to you all the time. So it's not just for China, but what I heard was that the U.S. was able to kill a large part of the Iranian leadership by following their movements through the street cameras and figuring out where they were hanging out. And the Chinese realized that they were also being tracked by these cameras, that they'd somehow been hacked, and that's the reason why they removed them. Not out of any, sudden wish to protect people's privacy, which, doesn't exist in China. But nonetheless, they have also realized that this whole system of social points and constant tracking was not what Chinese civilization is about. They're much more into harmony than control. But this information was given to me by Richard Koshimizu of the Japan Independence Party, and I'll try to get further confirmation. But it is what I heard. They removed the cameras. Next question.
Ivan, we have our last question for today. I heard that Guantanamo is building more cells. Is that true? And if so, do you know anything about it? And maybe you could let us know who's there doing that.
Well, the last time I checked on Google Earth, there was huge amounts of facilities being built there. I haven't checked for a while, but I'll ask around. But the thing is, we don't want to have secret trials that you read about from a single source like Real Raw News that is highly suspect. We want this to be public and everybody on Earth can see it, like the Nuremberg tribunals. So, you know, the days of supposedly secret trials in Guantanamo's end. We must have public trials for everybody to see. We need to see people like Jared Kushner put in handcuffs and arrested in front of the cameras and face justice. Same with all these Epstein criminals. Enough is enough. So it shouldn't be Guantanamo. It should be prisons inside the U.S. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and I hope to see you again next week. In ancient times, but it's also recognized by labor unions around the world as the day when they won the right to the 8-hour workday. Well, the labor movement needs to get on the warpath again because the situation right now is very, very bad. Basically, much of the West is subjected to a system of Babylonian debt slavery, where they are forced to spend an entire lifetime paying money to criminal banks who create their money out of nothing because they've artificially raised the prices of houses beyond the ability for people to afford. Back in the 50s and 60s, a worker at a factory could have his own house, afford it and pay it off in no time, and be able to support his wife so she could be a full-time caretaker of her children and raise the next generation. Now, both parents have to work, and children are forced into brainwashing institutions at a very young age in order so that they can be brainwashed. This is the fight that is going on. And what's happening is there has been, the White Hats have reached a consensus that we are going to stage a jubilee, which is to cancel all debt, public and private, and free people from debt slavery. And then we're going to replace the current system of creating money out of nothing by, controlled by Satanists into a system where a future planning agency run by the smartest people on Earth under complete transparency will ask people what sort of future they want and figure out how to make it happen. And we figured out what is blocking us now. And the trail leads to the fake King Charles of England. Okay, he's not the real one. And King Charles was just in the United States where he made a speech, celebrating 250 years of U.S. independence. And the speech was mostly all very good stuff, talking about how the Magna Carta, meant the government just couldn't arrest you for no reason, and support for human rights, democracy, rule of law. He touched all the right buttons, except for two things. One is he wanted to get the United States to support war against Ukraine, or war against Russia on behalf of Ukraine. Let's be clear. What's happening in Ukraine is not a war. It's a genocide. The population of Ukraine went from 90 million in the 1990s to about 18 million today. A lot of them were forced out of the country. But this was a center of bioweapons attacks against humanity, of human slavery, to harvest adrenochrome. All the worst crimes on earth were taking place in the Ukraine, and it's still a genocide. And this man goes around supporting it. The reason why is that's why getting rid of Charles, he's the M1, the controller of the money supply for the dark hats, is a number one priority. Now, his grandson, Prince William, is not the son of Charles. He's the son of the former king of Spain and of Diana, and they're Christians, and you need to replace the fake Charles with King William, or the United States and the UK will continue to degenerate. Now, the other thing that disturbed me about the Charles speech was his mention of the so-called assassination attempt against the fake Donald Trump. Now remember, this was used to create an excuse so they could rebuild a White House ballroom into a temple of Satan. Okay. Now, if you still think this is a real assassination attempt, take a look at these videos. First is the one of all these people laughing as it's taking place. Okay, you don't laugh when there's a real assassination attempt. So take a look at this video. So the whole thing was theater for no good reason, except to justify creating a temple of Satan in the White House. This is the reality that we're facing with this fake government. And the problem goes beyond the United States, and it goes to the UN Security Council, because they have shown themselves to be controlled by Satanists when they refuse to condemn United States and Israel for attacking Iran. Justice Department is on the case, and it will happen. Now, the other thing that's happening is that the United States economy, still controlled by the Satanists, is being quarantined. People in the United States, which is still occupied by Satanists, have noticed that their gasoline prices are rising. Well, guess what? They're not rising for most of the rest of the world because they are getting their oil from Iran, and they're just not paying to the satanic banks anymore. So the UAE is now independent from these people, and a friend who lives there has gone back and said life is returning to normal because they have agreed to join the rest of humanity against these Satanists. Canada has been blockading automobile parts to the United States, and they may soon block potash. And farmers right now in the United States already have a 100% increase in fertilizer costs just as the spring planting season has begun, and they've lost their export markets. And farmers were among the main supporters of the real Donald Trump, who, as I keep repeating, was replaced in June of 2025. So farmers need to, use their clout to remove these criminals from government. And the other thing, of course, is we need to get rid of that clown Pete Hegseth, so-called Minister of War, who's presided over the greatest military defeat in U.S. history. We have confirmed from multiple independent sources that all U.S. bases in the region have been destroyed. I am hearing some reports that up to 7 U.S. Aircraft carriers have been destroyed now. Even if they haven't, the fact is that they are obsolete. Okay, any rational military would immediately bring them back and turn them into scrap, recycle the parts to make missiles and other technology that actually is, up to date, because they're obsolete and they're sitting ducks if they haven't already been sunk. Now, to understand just how incompetent the U.S. military leadership and the fake Trump are, listen to this testimony from the congresswoman from San Diego, which has one of the largest military communities in the United States. Listen to this testimony for a minute. So you can see these are some of the most brainwashed and loyal people who have been following the official narrative devoutly, and yet even they are realizing that something is very, very wrong with the leadership, and we need to move in. We need to we need to remove these people. And I know that they're going to try to flee to South America, but we must not let them get away this time. We have to make sure this satanic infection is permanently removed from this planet so that we can have world peace where we have...
But my constituent, this war in Iran is not theoretical.
U.S. history. We have confirmed from multiple independent sources that all U.S. bases in the region have been destroyed. I am hearing some reports that up to 7 U.S. Aircraft carriers have been destroyed now. Even if they haven't, the fact is that they are obsolete. Okay, any rational military would immediately bring them back and turn them into scrap, recycle the parts to make missiles and other technology that actually is, up to date, because they're obsolete and they're sitting ducks if they haven't already been sunk. Now, to understand just how incompetent the U.S. military leadership and the fake Trump are, listen to this testimony from the congresswoman from San Diego, which has one of the largest military communities in the United States. So you can see these are some of the most brainwashed and loyal people who have been following the official narrative devoutly, and yet even they are realizing that something is very, very wrong with the leadership, and we need to move in. We need to close these. We need to remove these people, and I know that they're going to try to flee to South America, but we must not let them get away this time. We have to make sure this satanic infection is permanently removed from this planet so that we can have world peace, where we have the people of humanity decide what kind of future they want to build together, and we make it happen. We don't be scared from one fake terrorist incident into fighting each other forever. The source of almost all wars, genocides, everything is this cult, and they've been controlling the United States and Israel. They are a plague on this planet, and an international movement is now working to remove them from power. But we have to go after the fake King Charles. We have to go after the fake Trump. They have to be removed from our screens, and then this nightmare will end. But we will keep up the fight. But like I say, the Charles is now a high priority white hat target. Same with the fake Trump and Hegseth. They all must go, and hopefully this nightmare will end soon, and we'll have a jubilee. All your debts will be canceled, and then you'll have government that actually does what you want, not forces you into slavery. That's what we're fighting for, and this is what May Day is about. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
I bet we have our first question for today. What do you believe happens to Wilcox? Do you believe that he actually committed suicide, or does it seem like there's more to this?
Well, let me tell you a story. They once sent a North Korean spy to one of my public speaking engagements, and she offered herself to me, and I was naive at the time. She was beautiful, she was young, and I ended up living with her for a while, and she started going to the police and saying I was taking drugs, I was being abusive. She started doing, tried to chase away all my friends, and finally I took her out into the countryside where there was no cell phone coverage and asked her why she was doing this, and she explained that her family was being blackmailed. Her name, by the way, because she agreed to work with me. But in any case, she told me that her job, her assignment was to chase away all my friends, isolate me, and then dump me, and hopefully bankrupt me as well, so that I would commit suicide. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened to David Wilcox, but he did have a beautiful young woman and as a wife, and everything seemed to be going great. And I don't know what happened to him, if he fell into a similar trap they tried on me. I just don't know, but he was trying to work on free energy, and even if he committed suicide, he was driven into it. That's my belief. Okay, next question.
Hi, Ben. What's going on with this war in Iran? We're hearing less and less about it recently. And also in Ukraine, we're not hearing much about anything that's happening over there right now. Is there any information that you can give us in regards to both of those ongoing wars?
Well, the U.S., the Khazarian mafia has lost in both Iran, Israel, and Ukraine. And I forgot to mention that Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi was in Russia and last week, and they reached an agreement that the settlement with Iran and Israel and Ukraine were all linked to the same people, and that Russia, China, Iran, and now Canada, Germany, France, most of the West are agreed that these mafiosi gangsters must be removed from power in Ukraine, in Israel, in the United States, and they're putting together a united front. So the reason you're not getting news is because the United States and the Ukrainians have completely lost in the battlefield, and Israel, I understand, has surrendered and will soon be replaced by the state of Judea, which will be multi-religious, multinational, and friendly to its neighbors. So basically, the Satanists lost the war, and now they're circling the wagons in Washington, D.C., and in South America, in Patagonia. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Why, if the United States is a bankrupted government, is the US dollar so strong globally right now? Shouldn't it be crashing if the US government is bankrupt? It is way up right now on the yen, the won, and pretty much every other currency with the exception of the euro and the pound. What's going on with this?
Well, as I keep repeating, the US dollar is no longer American. What's happened is that starting in 2008, they quarantined all the dollars owned by people outside of the United States from the ones being newly created by the Federal Reserve Board. So these dollars are owned by China, they're owned by the countries that have trade surpluses, they're backed by gold, and they're separate from the dollars that they're using to pump up cryptocurrency in the stock market in the United States. Even though they're both the American dollar, they have different serial numbers, and they're not being accepted with, in other words, the US dollar is strong because it's not American anymore. That's the bottom line. And the United States is still pretending they control it, but they only control it within the United States and a few other very limited places. And mostly the only way they can launder it is through the stock market and through crypto. Next question.
Hi, Ben. I'd like to point out that J.D. Vance, who also may not be the original, has been in the company of Kushner and Witkoff when trying to negotiate a peace deal. He's the vice president of the fake Trump administration, so he's essentially compromised like the rest of them. None of them can be trusted, and all of them need to be arrested. To think he's the lesser of the two evils, in my opinion, is ridiculous. If the bad guys are running Trump, then they must be running all of them. What happened to taking down Bridget Macron as the ringleader? Now you're telling us these other names after stating it was Bridget who needed to go to collapse the Trump show. So who is it that needs to go first in order to stop this chaos everywhere?
Well, if you see what France is doing right now, they condemned the war in Iran, and basically Brigitte Macron or Jean-Michel de Rothschild has surrendered. And so the problem now is some Italians in the P3 or T2 Freemasons who control the acting troupe with people like J.D. Vance and the fake Trump who are the source of the problem. But my view is that if J.D. Vance is just an actor reading a script, then one way to do it would just be to give him a new script. However, I think it would be better at this point to shut down the entire acting troupe and restore actual democracy once again to the United States. So instead of having hidden controllers handing scripts to actors who appear, who play the role of vice president or whatever, we should restore actual democracy. And that's what Canada's fighting to do, to liberate their American brothers and sisters from this system. Next question.
I mean, we have our last question for today. Japan has sold off all U.S. bonds, is what you said recently. If that's true in substance, it's kind of a good news. But my doubt is the sell-off may be to trick a make-believe window, dressing up to look like so, because I suspect who would be interested in buying these real terrorist government U.S. bonds now? That's to say, who would be buying the bonds from Japan?
Well, what's happening is the United States is buying their own bonds by, creating fronts like through these offshore places like the Bahamas, and using cryptocurrency, or in other words, they pretend that somebody's buying them by printing money out of thin air, but they're not accepted as currency in most of the world anymore. And that's why your gas prices are going up. So, Japan did sell them, and the United States created fake money to hide that. But that's not going to make a difference because there's something known as the real world, and you're seeing that with hyperinflation in the United States and with the rise in gas prices. Your economy is being quarantined until you get rid of these Satanists and their fake government show. Force, because the Chinese and the rest of the world have offered to write off all American and Western debt, public and private, and replace a system of Babylonian debt slavery with one where the government creates money and uses it for the public good. And the offer is on the table, and the elites are refusing it because they're still trying to enslave us. And this war on Iran, and who are these people? Well, let's take a look at the person that the so-called U.S. government sent to negotiate in Pakistan with Iran, Jared Kushner. Here's a guy who's starting genocide in order to profit personally, supposedly representing the U.S. government. This is the same guy who bought 666 West 5th Avenue, the home of Lucent Technologies, where they were developing microchips to implant into human brains. Is this who we want in charge of our government? I don't think so. And the problem is that these people do not want to give up their magic money machine. It's the source of their power. More than 98% of American congressmen accept money from AIPAC. That means they represent Israel, not the United States. And they're not going to give up quietly. They're not going to go away. But these are human slavers. And the whole world is realizing it. Take a look at this MP in Europe, pointing out what the whole world knows. The Nazis and Israelis are the same people. These are Jews who killed other Jews to force them to go along with their insane plans. These are the people who run the United States. And they just lost a war with Iran, and it's the biggest military defeat in U.S. history. I had some talks with U.S. intelligence people and military intelligence, and they told me that 4,000 American soldiers were killed by Iranian missiles, and 3,000 of their family members. They were, buried under their rubble as their plants they're working on were bombed. So this has been an incredible disaster. And yet, for some reason, we still have on our screens a visibly insane man, supposedly Donald Trump, and he was replaced, they seem to have come up with a replacement. But nonetheless, this person is not in charge, and this person is not sane. So, we definitely need to invoke the 25th Amendment, and I believe that the answer is going to have to be J.D. Vance. Here you see J.D. Vance. I know he's connected to Peter Thiel and he's not ideal, but we need at least to step in the right direction with him. And here he is saying that he's going to go after pedophiles. That's important because it's this whole pedophile blackmail network that's fighting for their lives to prevent us from liberating ourselves from their system of Babylonian debt slavery. And they are slavers. For example, we now have a rabbi explaining to us that Ukrainian women were brought into Israel as slaves, prostitute slaves, against their will. Listen to him talk about it. So these are the kind of people who control the so-called U.S. government. And they even brag about it. AIPAC put out an ad saying, hey, yeah, we control all the politicians. They're bragging about it. They want to enslave us. And yet somehow they still control the United States, but not the rest of the world. And we can be pretty sure that this is not going to last much longer. For example, the United States says they're going to block the Straits of Hormuz. Well, they can't. They didn't. It's a lie. They've been militarily defeated. What they're going to try to do next, though, and this one could be good, they're going to try to blockade the Straits of Malacca. That's where 80% of China's oil goes through. So at a higher level, the U.S. and China do have to come up with an agreement on a new system. And it is happening. And also, China is changing in ways people don't realize. They just removed 700 million cameras from their streets. You know how they had this facial recognition system? They had cameras everywhere. They removed the whole thing. They took it out. They said, no, we don't want to have a digital prison for China. Okay, so they are changing, and I think we can reach a deal with them where together we work to make this planet better. Not to enslave everybody to one tribe of Satanists, but rather to all of us decide together what sort of future we want to build, what sort of world we want to live in. This can be done. We just have to remove the criminals who control the Congress, and most importantly, we need to take their control away from the magic money machine. This is the important thing. We need to go after Scott Bessent. He is married to a man, has a bunch of children. God knows where they got those children from, and God knows what they're doing to them, but that's not the sort of person who should be in charge of the money of the American people. And this, he has to be removed. And as I keep repeating, the Dragon family has an offer on the table to offer, with gold-backed money, to wipe off all debt, private and public, for the entire West, and then provide unlimited funding that you don't have to pay back to rebuild your infrastructure. Because the Asians believe that if you make your customer rich, they make you rich. It's a win-win solution for them. So the offer's on the table. We're waiting for an answer. And until we get one, we're just going to have to keep going after these people and keep doing it until they're finally and permanently removed from control of the West. This is very important. And it is happening. I mean, France, Spain, the UK, everybody in NATO has broken away from the Israeli regime. So the United States, the Israeli-occupied United States is more isolated now than it has ever been. All the Western allies are dumping them, and it cannot last much longer, but it's horrific to see. We still have this madman on our screens every day pretending that he's somehow a leader. He's not. He is a puppet Satanist, and this whole thing has to be taken down, and we're going to require the military to move into Mar-a-Lago and all these other places and shut down these studios, the TV studios, pretending to be government. Enough is enough. I think we're all sick and tired of it, and I'll be lobbying everywhere I can to make sure that this nightmare ends. But rest assured, most of the world has already shaken these people off, and now it's just the United States and Israel that need to be freed, and Ukraine. Once that's done, it's game over. So we're close. Hang in there, folks. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Ivan, we have our first question for today. A few years ago, you mentioned that George Soros is dead. Now there are people that still think he is alive and well. So, in your opinion, which one is it? I did a quick search on Brave Browser, which found that George Soros is actively alive and healthy as of April 2026.
Dick Cheney, years ago. And after I was told that, the Soros family put out an announcement saying they're going to, hand over control to his children. But after that, they put out an obviously fake video of Soros speaking at, supposedly it was in Davos, Switzerland, but the video was recorded in San Francisco. And I'm pretty sure San Francisco is not in Switzerland. But what's happening is they keep the pretense these people are alive in order to keep that sort of power structure intact. So they pretend he's alive to protect the real handlers, from assassination, and to make it look like, it's still the same people in charge of money. Because otherwise, all sorts of messy inherent things come up. So that's why they keep replacing, until they stop pretending he's alive, it's not over. So he's alive in the sense that he's alive as a lobby of a group of people who control the money printing machines. But the real George Soros is long gone, that's for sure. Next question.
Hi Ben, I remember you said in a previous video you can show up to an airport in Japan 15 minutes before domestic departures and nobody will search you, which we normally get through at international entrances. My question is, who's the ultimate controller of the international flight security control at global airports? IATA, so SUS, or WEF for clans. Even harmless wine cork openers are confiscated at Haneda Airport, and control for the sake of controlling is still imposed. Isn't there any pressure against those in control of international flights for Japan, and why would these so easy checks only be applied to domestic departures?
Well, the domestic departures do actually have security screening. They're just really efficient at it. But yeah, this whole idea of forcing us to go through that humiliating ritual at airports, it's designed partly so they can sell machinery. They have like these body scanners and stuff. But the whole thing does, the path leads to Switzerland and the Octagon Group. And, hopefully when this is over, people will once again be able to just hop on a plane, 15 minutes before flight. And then they can do that without any worrying about hijacking, because the technology's there. They can just walk through, and if there's a gun or something, it'll be scanned. So there's no reason to have these huge lineups except to humiliate us and to sell unnecessary equipment to airports. And it's really annoying. And hopefully this will all end soon. Next question.
Hi, Ben. In your last video, you mentioned that we have, quote, lost to China. Could you explain what that means to all of us, as we in North America, are we now under Chinese control?
Well, what I mean is that the U.S. Moved their industrial base out of the United States into China. This was the leaders of the, big corporations. So China can now manufacture like 11 times more steel, etc. So the real physical economy has been moved to China, and this is not something that can be fixed overnight. So what needs to happen, and the Chinese are offering to help, is to once again rebuild industry inside the United States. And the reason the current ruling class does not want Chinese help to rebuild U.S. industry is because they want to stay in control, and that is what's blocking it. But essentially, these people thought that as long as they had their magic money machine, they could let the Asians actually build stuff. But they forgot that money is only valuable if it's backed by something real, and they lost everything real to back their money. So they lost the financial war, they lost the economic war, and they're losing the public opinion war big time. That's the reality. But, the American people and the Western people are waking up, and they're going to overthrow these criminals, and then once again we'll leave China in the dust. You watch and see. Next question.
Hi, Ben. In your last video at the 50-second mark, you say the U.S. military has announced a peace agreement with Iran that basically meant a complete surrender. How can you say that it is surrendering if it is only a ceasefire and not a peace agreement?
Well, if you look at the agreement that was published after Trump was put in the hospital, they said they're going to withdraw all U.S. troops from the Middle East. They were going to pay Iran compensation, and the other thing is they've lost the ability to block the Strait of Hormuz or to control the oil in the region. But what's happening now is the U.S. is moving to the Straits of Malacca, and that is a place where they can actually apply real pressure. So they can force China to reach a fair deal with the West, and that is what is going to happen. But as far as Iran is concerned, the reality is they lost big time. They lost 5 aircraft carriers. Israel lost 60% of their F-35s. They lost 15 Apache helicopters in like 5 minutes in Lebanon, and that means that they can't protect their tanks. And the missiles destroyed the fortified underground bunkers where the Israeli leadership was leaving. So no matter how much they try to fake the news, the reality is they lost. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. What is the deadline for the offer being made to pay off all of the debt? One can only assume that this isn't an offer that's extended into extended perpetually. What's going on with the army being assembled to hunt down the Khazarian mafia as well? And has it started yet?
Well, obviously, it still has a long way to go because we still haven't seen anybody arrested for the Epstein case in the United States. But the fact that the Edmund the Rothschild Bank was raided, and the fact that a high-level Freemason assassination squad was arrested, this means that this very high-level control of the government is being removed in France, and that people like Kushner and Trump are underneath these people. So at a very high level, it is happening. But until we get these idiots off our screens, and we once again have, government, by the people and for the people, it's not over, and we have to keep fighting. But I ask for the military to please, go into Congress and arrest every single member of Congress who's accepted money from IPAC. That would be a good way to start. Okay, well, that's what we have to say this week, and hopefully there'll be good news next week. It's going to happen, but it's very frustrating to see these people still in power after all they've done, but it cannot last much longer. They don't have money, they don't have support, and they're internationally isolated. It should not be too long before Jared Kushner and all those people are handcuffed in front of the cameras. We've just all worked to make it happen. All right, well, hope to see you again next week.
Restored Republic via GCO. Judy note, patriots, truth seekers, and fellow Americans, the moment we've all been waiting for has arrived. The Great Awakening is here. JFK Jr. returns, EBS blackout activated. John F. Kennedy Jr., the son who never truly left the fight, has returned. He is stepping forward on the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS, to expose the deep state lies, the Kennedy coup, and the decades of deception that have enslaved humanity. EBS blackout activation in progress. Phones, TV, radio, and mainstream media going dark. One channel. One truth. Full disclosure documentaries incoming. Nizara/Jazara announcement imminent. Global lockdown for 10 to 12 days. Stay home, stay safe, stay ready. Martial law to protect the people during mass arrests. Quantum Financial System, QFS, rollout, your new future begins. We are witnessing the end of the old world and the birth of freedom, prosperity, and justice for all. Stay calm. Remain indoors. Await official EBS instructions. Do not leave your shelter. This is the storm we've been promised. God protects his warriors. Trump plus JFK Jr. plus we the people equals victory. Share this now, wake up your family and friends before the blackout hits full form. 2s. August 4, 2026. What national debt? U.S. national debt $36 trillion. Over the years the privately owned by the cabal U.S. incorporated government borrowed this so-called debt money from their own privately owned by the cabal Federal Reserve. That money was created out of thin air by the Fed. You can't owe someone something they never owned in the first place. The U.S. national debt has always been fictitious. The American government was not funded by your taxes. Since 1913 the privately owned by the cabal U.S. incorporated government collected and spent U.S. taxpayer monies on their own nefarious projects and then made money to lend to the cabal U.S. incorporated government appear out of nowhere. Trump has stopped all that. In 2016 he retrieved all of the gold stolen from U.S. taxpayers, most of which was stored beneath the Vatican, and in July 2026 released the global currency reset of gold/asset-backed currencies of 209 nations that now traded at a 1-to-1 with each other. 2s. August 4, 2026. John Clauser, Nobel Prize in Physics, and 1,500 more scientists at Quantum Korea say, there is no climate change, there is no climate emergency. Dr. Clauser added, the climate change narrative is a dangerous corruption that threatens the economy on a global level. August 3, 2026. On January 6, Representative Clay Higgins with Lara Logan, Capitol Police and Metro officers walked into rooms inside the Capitol, still in uniform, and came out dressed as Trump supporters and construction workers. Trump was still speaking outside. They've sat on the video for years. For 47 years, the Rothschild have controlled the skies through a network of 22 weather modification stations that could direct hurricanes, droughts, floods, and earthquakes, on demand, to any place on Earth. The program was called Throne Climate and was funded by a labyrinth of NGOs, carbon credit systems, and green energy foundations. all connected to the same family office in Geneva that has controlled European banks since 1815. A few days ago, the last station was disconnected, seized in a military operation involving 6 nations that have never publicly acknowledged working together. The weather is no longer a weapon. For the first time since 1979. See Global Currency Reset, twos. August 4, 2026 Redemption centers have gone live in 3 states, Trump Redemption Center on Telegram, twos. August 4, 2026 Bruce, the big call, the ZIM has been trading and it's going up in value. It's possible to come out slightly higher than $1. We could possibly be getting the new currency rates showing on the Forex by Wednesday 5th of August. If this does not go by WED, then we are looking at Saturday or Sun. 8, August 9, 2026. The difference will be how the arrests were going. The 800 numbers to set exchange appointments should come out by both text and email. Bruce will put the 800 hash out on his call. Twos. August 4, 2026, breaking, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent confirms no CBDC under President Trump. That would be the first step toward tracking. E2s. August 4, 2026 NESURA and QFS plan, the Q awakening on Telegram, what you need to know. Reclamation, the return to a better state. This is about more than just land or money, it's about restoring what was taken by the elites through their criminal systems. NESURA will do that for U.S. citizens. Restitution/reparation, compensating for the years of illegal taxes, loans, and the financial enslavement we've suffered. The income taxes, mortgages, and credit cards they've been used to keep us as chattel, with bonds taken out against our very lives from birth certificates to social security numbers. Who's eligible? Those aged 24 to 61 plus are in line for massive lump sums depending on their age group, 61 plus, up to $61 million 45 to 60, up to $38 million 24 to 44, up to $23 million. This payout is reparation for the wrongs committed against us. NESURA and QFS plan. The process of RV redemption started, actual signature forms like NDA and post-redemption plan documents, inside the exclusive world of redemption centers. The process of RV redemption is unfolding, and it's about more than just money. This is about reclaiming what's been stolen from us by the cabal, deep state, and banksters. Redemption centers are where we take back control, where NESURA/JESARA protocols are in full effect. At these centers, we the people will receive higher exchange rates, phones, laptops, and even rainbow currency. If you've prepared your humanitarian initiative trust, you're in prime position to benefit. This isn't just a financial reset, it's God's plan, working through us to help humanity. Redemption types, currency exchange, for those with ZIM bonds, dinar, and dong, you're looking at double-digit rates at redemption centers, with gold-backed values. The ZIM bond is 1-to-1 to the new USD dollar. You'll be asked to allocate a portion of your funds for humanitarian projects. We're not just saving ourselves, we're saving the world. XRP buyback. There's a $1 million per token value on XRP set by the QFS, already mirrored into quantum accounts. This buyback is part of a larger strategy to stabilize global markets and root out the evil. This is about more than money. This is about justice, about freedom, and about taking back what's ours. The deep state's grip is slipping, and this process is the path to redemption. The time is now, patriots. We must stand ready to rebuild and restore. Twos. August 4, 2026 The new pillars of wealth, quantum financial system. Intel on Telegram, QFS, quantum financial system, unhackable, transparent, and gold-backed. The end of fiat corruption, XRP, the bridge, the official institutional rail for instant global liquidity. The bridge between nations, XLM, the exchange, empowering the people with seamless, peer-to-peer asset exchange. Twos. August 4, 2026, the trigger has been confirmed. Phase 2 is now live across all primary nodes. Tier 4B redemptions have entered active flow status. QFS trust releases have begun. The signal has been verified. The shift is no longer come. Tuesday 4th of August. 2026 The fall of Babylon, the great unmasking. The veil is finally tearing open. Israel is last because it holds the master keys to the global illusion. The global spiderweb revealed. Look closer at the machinery that has enslaved human consciousness for millennia. It was never about nations, borders, or political parties. It has always been a spiritual and energetic warfare waged by the Khazarian mafia and their puppet masters. The financial chokehold, The 1913 Federal Reserve and the City of London act as the twin beating hearts of global debt slavery, funneling trillions into black budget operations, underground military bases, and human trafficking rings. The media monopoly. The 6 major corporate media conglomerates are entirely run by CIA/Mossad assets. Their sole directive is to project low-frequency fear, keeping humanity trapped in loops of helplessness, division, and artificial scarcity. The techno-censorship grid. Silicon Valley algorithms were engineered by intelligence agencies to suppress sovereign thought, alternative history, and spiritual awakening. The dominoes are falling. Every major historical event of the last 2 centuries was scripted by the same hidden hand to centralize power. The Titanic, 1912, not an accident, but the strategic elimination of prominent opponents to the creation of the Federal Reserve. The Bolshevik Revolution, 1917, funded entirely by Wall Street bankers to overthrow the Russian Tsar and establish a totalitarian template for global control. Operation Paperclip and Mockingbird, importing high-ranking Nazi scientists and intelligence operatives directly into the Pentagon, NASA, and mainstream media to weaponize psychological warfare against the American public. The Great Awakening cannot be stopped. The deep state operators are in a state of absolute panic. Their panic is visible in every desperate mainstream media narrative, every forced digital ID push, and every engineered crisis designed to distract the masses. They are cornered. The Vatican financial records are open. The trafficking tunnels beneath major global capitals have been mapped and targeted. The sovereign human collective is waking up to the frequency of love, truth, and unity. The false light is dying. The true organic light of creation is returning to reclaim this planet. Hold the frequency. Trust the plan. The storm is here. Twos. July 4, 2026. How the Knights Templar became the Jesuit Order. The Jesuit Order, who were once the Knights Templars, were created by Ignatius Loyola in 1534. The Venetian oligarchy can be traced back to the Phoenician/Canaanite mystery religion occult priests. Twos. August 4, 2026. City of London Corporation. It became a sovereign state in 1694, when King William III of Orange privatized, and turned the Bank of England over to the bankers. The Crown is the private corporate city-state of London. Includes the Rothschild, Warburg, Oppenheimer, and Schiff families. All roads lead back to the Rothschild. But instead of fixing the security issue, they are charging customers $7.99 per month. That's $96 per year to be protected from this hacking. The security package even comes with stolen vehicle assist. So they know that your vehicle can be stolen by this and they'll assist and get it back. For a prim. Twos. August 4, 2026. Christopher Wray's paid confidential human source James Aaron Knowles, who infiltrated the Proud Boys, is leading the overthrow of the United States government at the U.S. Capitol garage on January 6 for January 6. In other words, this means Liz Cheney and the J6 committee viewed this tape, she saw it, they saw it, but refused to release the tape. Why? Because this tape would shatter the fraud the January 6 committee were perpetrating on the county. K2s. August 4, 2026. This is the January 6 bombshell they never wanted you to see. Representative Clay Higgins just went nuclear on camera with Lara Logan and dropped evidence that changes everything. Capitol Police and Metro officers walked into rooms inside the Capitol, still in uniform, and came out dressed as Trump supporters and construction workers. Trump was still speaking outside. Higgins, we have other evidence, including specific observations of police officers, Capitol Police and Metro entering rooms here in the Capitol in uniform and coming out as Trump supporters and construction workers. They've sat on the video for years. This wasn't a spontaneous riot. This was coordinated. The narrative is collapsing in real time. N2s. August 4, 2026, conspiracy theorists are right again. Smart dust and even an expansion of it are real, documented and have been tested. Smart dust, dust-sized cameras floating around like dandelion seeds, was originally conceived as a weapon. The idea was that helicopters and drones could drop smart dust into the air, and that would serve as a battlefield sensor network. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley announced they'd expanded on the concept by creating something called stim dust. Stim dust gives the operator control over your nervous system. According to a press release, stim dust has, quote, opened the door for wireless communication to the brain and peripheral nervous system through tiny implantable devices inside body that are powered by ultrasound. The researchers successfully implanted stim dust in a live rodent. They were able by doing this to, Quote, control hind leg motion. Today the world is watching you. Tomorrow the world could be controlling you like a video game character, so on one hand you have a genuine medical purpose something like this could be used for, on the other hand you know how evil the government and globalists are and you're right to be worried about technology like this. The original smart dust is real too. Smart dust is the 1990s 2000s idea from Chris Pister and others at Berkeley, swarms of tiny autonomous sensors with sensing, computing and wireless communication. Lab prototypes of this smart dust exist and specialized MEMS sensors have existed for years. O2s. August 4, 2026. ISNT real. It's a number on a screen. And they control the screen, martial law on Telegram. U.S. national debt, $36 trillion. They mention the number. The clock ticking up. They say it's a crisis. Your grandchildren will pay for this. That is austerity required. That programs have to be cut. But ask one question, who is the debt owed to? The government borrows money from the Federal Reserve. That money is created out of thin air by the Fed. A number typed on a computer. None of the vaults open. No movement of gold. No transfer of wealth. The number appears on a screen and all of a sudden the government owes trillions. And interest. You can't owe someone something they never owned. You cannot owe an entity that created the loan out of thin air. The debt is not real. It is fiction, sustained by the collective belief that numbers on a screen are an obligation. All the money in the world is borrowed. Every last one. The Fed loans them into existence. It makes dollars. If the debt was paid off, if every mortgage, every loan, every government bond was paid off, there wouldn't be a dollar in circulation. Negative. Because the interest never got created. They create $100 out of nothing and ask for $105 back. But there is $100. The $5 interest was never made. Mathematically you can't pay it back. The system needs a constant growth of debt to work. Not for mismanagement on purpose. Default is not a bug. That is the feature the system makes sure that more is owed than exists, ensuring permanent debt slavery for every participant. Countries, corporations, persons. All caught up in a mathematical impossibility masquerading as economics. Iceland showed it was false. In 2008, Iceland's banks failed. The government was faced with the same choice that any nation is faced with: bail out the banks. Take the debt. Impose austerity on the population. Every other country decided to submit. Iceland said no, they let the banks go under. They arrested the bankers. He refused the debt. Predicted collapse. IMF. The media predicted mayhem. What happened? Iceland recovered more quickly than any country that imposed austerity. Their economy boomed. Jobs bounced back. The unpayable crisis disappeared, because it never existed. The figures on the screen were wiped out. And the physical world remained the same. For there had never been anything to back them up. The debt was always fictitious. Iceland showed that. And what they did is not in any mainstream economics textbook. Because if one country can erase imaginary debt and prosper, all countries can. And the whole control system melts away. $36 trillion. Owned by an institution that built it from scratch. Demanding payment in real labor, real resources, real human life hours for digits typed into being. The government is not funded by your taxes. The government makes money appear out of nowhere. Your taxes are for one thing only, to maintain the illusion that money is scarce. That it has to be collected before it can be spent. That you have to work to earn what they create with the stroke of a key. The control is the lack. Take away the illusion of scarcity and the obedience that comes with it. Code, debt fiction / interest impossible / Iceland proof / scarcity illusion. $36 trillion owed to a fiction writer. Returned in thy true labor. Your life in real time. For their imaginary numbers.
And that we're going to be stuck with this horrific form of government forever. But I guarantee you that's not the case. Again, since it's a summer sort of lull, let's step back and look at the big picture. In 1999, when Stanley Kubrick produced the movie Eyes Wide Shut, people were asleep. They didn't know what was happening. But the black mass that he depicted in a very censored version in his movie turns out to be true. And what has happened now is that it is becoming common knowledge And this is no longer something that is on the fringes of the internet, but it's happening on mainstream television and in government offices. For example, let's listen for this 15-year-old girl, Teresa, talk about her 12 years of satanic abuse. I'll play you the first minute and a half of her talking. You know, Teresa describes a culture that we've heard about from so many other witnesses who don't know each other, who spread across time and space, but they all describe something similar. A Satan-worshipping cult that holds black masses, that sacrifices humans, and that requires the production of babies for the purpose of sacrifice and eating. And it's so horrific. And yet, and here's the point, is that they managed to infiltrate the highest levels of government. And most important of all, they managed to hijack the money-producing machine. This is what basically decides the future course of civilization. And in the West, this has been hijacked by some very evil people. Listen to this next clip describing how $1 trillion a year is taken from U.S. taxpayers to pay for child trafficking, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and a luxury lifestyle for criminals. So this is all coming out now, but the real question is, how much longer will this last? When can we finally overthrow this system? Because it's been very frustrating. But again, let's face it, when I started this search, nobody had heard about this, or it was the deepest, darkest secret. Now, I think a majority is aware that Western civilization has fallen on a satanic cult. And the trick, the battle we're facing now, is to take away their control of the financial system. Because once you do that, they lose control of, they can no longer pay their mercenaries, their men in black to enforce their rule. They can no longer bribe politicians to obey them. So it is the key to everything. And it turns out that this key is probably going to be Saudi Arabia and Israel. Those two governments will have to fall in order for the system in the West to collapse. That's my understanding of the situation now. And you know what? It is going to happen. For one thing, the Jewish people are awake. Okay? Watch this clip of Benjamin Netanyahu, the international war criminal, being shouted out of parliament in Israel. They're saying, shame, shame, shame. Watch. So while the Israelis are heading for a civil war, and the Israeli population is, the Jewish people are finally waking up to the fact that their rulers are the same and forced them out of Europe during World War II, they're still in charge. And they're not happy about it. And this situation is not going to be allowed to last. But more importantly, the United States has suffered a military defeat in the war against Iran. They have run out of interceptor missiles. Their entire military doctrine has been shown to be outdated. And this is very important because I've been in touch with Iranian sources. And so you can see, this is not being reported in the Western press. But the fact is that Saudi Arabia has lost the ability to export oil. And this means that control of the Western financial system is about to change. As a matter of background, okay, in 1972, when the U.S. ran out of gold to back the U.S. dollar, they switched to the oil-backed dollar. And the key to this was Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. So, for example, Saudi Arabia helped bankrupt the Soviet Union by putting down the price of oil to $27 a barrel. And they have repeatedly enforced the control by because they had such cheap oil, they could produce it so cheaply in such large quantities. I think there's 12 million barrels a day. They could bankrupt anybody who didn't obey the dollar system and pay for oil in dollars. Well, now Saudi Arabia is being cut off. They cannot export 12 million, and until the entrance to the Red Sea was cut off, they were down to about 3 or 4 million barrels a day, which is a quarter of what they could produce. And now they're at nothing. And more importantly, Saudi Arabia is not really a country. It's like a privately owned estate. It's like saying, Smith America. It belongs to the Smith family, and everybody there is their property. That's sort of like Saudi Arabia. Saudi's Arabia. Well, they're not very popular when they have no money, and people were able to look the other way as long as some of the money flowed their way, but that's being cut off. And more importantly, they don't really have a military. What they have was a mercenary army, a lot of them Pakistani, who were fighting on their behalf. Well, the battle in Yemen has been lost. They have lost the ability to, they've lost the control of the air in the entire region. And that was the background to their power. And without that, they're helpless. The United States military is in no position to stop the Yemeni invasion. And my understanding is they're going to take over the oil fields. And the Saudis, of course, they're saying they're going to create a 50-nation alliance to defend their oil. But you know what? The people in the Middle East are saying, wait a minute, why don't we just, instead of taking money from them, why don't we take their oil and make our own money? And this is what is most likely to happen. Now, here in the West, things are looking still pretty grim. We have obviously satanic slave leaders, people who are pushing for war for no good reason as the sort of future direction of our species. We have Friedrich Merz in Germany trying to turn the country into a complete fascist dictatorship with the death squads and everything. But he's widely hated. His support is in the 10% range. And I believe the German people will remove this BlackRock employee sooner rather than later. But again, we have to wait and see for it to happen. Now, in France, we still have this Rothschild puppet, Macron, supposedly in power, and they just set off a whole bunch of wildfires. And if you look at the reports, it's, 95% of the fires were set by arsonists. This is not just climate change. But the idea was to set huge fires to justify a 2030 agenda where they're going to take people out of the countryside and put them in these 15-minute cities. So they're still carrying out this kind of horrific attack. But again, that government is widely despised, and I know the French military no longer support it. The only reason it's still there is support of German military and Ukrainian mercenaries. But they are losing the war big time. I don't think that's going to last much longer. I think France will once again become independent. They replaced the widely hated Keir Starmer with another person, Andy Burnham, cut out of the same cloth. But this is they're just buying time because, as I've said, we don't really expect any real changes until the autumn. And even then, we're going to have to fight for it. But clearly, one of these leaders is going to have to fall. And it's looking more and more like the key is to remove the fake Trump and the fake Trump regime in the United States. And this is happening. I mean, they are running out of money. They are subject to an international boycott. And people are aware now that Trump is fake. The real Trump is long gone. And the United States is isolated like never before. No other countries except Israel, even Israel didn't participate in their attack on Iran. They did it first, but then they backed down. So they lost all their Western allies. And nobody is buying U.S. weapons anymore. The other thing that's happening is the boycott of oil is going to, it's hitting the United States economy. The price of gas is through the roof. So some sort of hard landing is going to come, but what I still do not understand is why the white hats in the Pentagon, the agencies, haven't gone in to remove these criminals. And I think the answer remains that the corruption is concentrated at the highest levels, and everyone else is used to obeying orders. But internationally, they are being boycotted, and I don't think that this satanic structure on top of Western society can last much longer. Already, when they try their old tricks, for example, when they went to Venezuela after setting off an earthquake weapon and they were hoping to gather children, as they always do, people on the ground prevented them. And all over the world, local police are arresting pedophiles. These are lower level people, but again, the whole system is falling apart. So my belief is one key that could change everything is removing the fake King Charles from England. And these people are fighting. They're fighting literally for their lives. That's why they're clinging to their last leaders. Merz in Germany, the fake Macron in France, Burnham in England, and Trump. When those people are gone, that's it. One of these dominoes is going to fall. The whole thing is going to fall apart. But in the meantime, the mass awakening continues. People are not forgetting about the Epstein files, and in an attempt to use AI to create some kind of super brain with robot soldiers to keep these people in power is a hallucination. It's not going to work. There's no way that they can pay for the $1.6 trillion they supposedly borrowed to build this giant AI infrastructure. There's no market for it. It's just a giant encyclopedia with heavy censorship. It's not some, whole new path into the future. And at the highest level, what people want is they want a government that actually works for them, that wants their interests to be number one. So what do people want? So we want to have a government that spends all the R&D that's now being spent on how to kill people with military industrial technology. They want to use that to figure out how to make people live longer, healthier, happier lives in harmony with nature. And again, once the species gets control of its own future, obviously we want to have more life, more human life, more animal life, more plant life, and we want, everybody to be friendly and not to have this sort of or there's terrorists or there's some enemy country that's out to get us. It's just, everything that's evil has taken over the governments of the West, and what we all must do is overthrow them once and for all. And the world is standing by, ready to help the Western people, especially the American people, free them from debt slavery. So a plan is there. It has been presented. It's backed by real assets. We're going to cancel all debts, public and private, for all the people in the United States and the world, including all the developing countries. And we'll have a big conference to reboot how we run this planet so that it works for life and not against life. That's the fight we're facing. But again, I don't expect any major changes for the next month or so. We're waiting for the collapse of the United States, but we're all going to push for it. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your summer, charge your batteries, and let's try to make it happen finally. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. In regards to med beds and quantum renaissance technology, what do you actually know about it? Does the military have it? And do you think that it'll ever be released to the general population if it does exist?
Well, I have been told about med beds and all this technology for years, but I've tried very hard to physically, see one. and that has come up dry. And I've talked to my U.S. Space Force sources on behalf of a member of the Dragon family, and they couldn't provide it. So my own view is that such technology would be possible as soon as the medical and pharmaceutical industry is taken over by the white hats, and the healthier people get, the longer they live, the more money doctors and medical companies make. That's the system we need to have. Right now we have a system where
Hi, Ben. You said the American people, quote, sent their army to destroy and bomb other countries, and it's the government, but in my opinion, it's not the people. What is taking so long to remove this government that is doing this against the will of the people?
the bottom line is that we're dealing with a very small group of very dangerous people who murder at the highest levels. They murder presidents, they murder kings, they murder prime ministers, and they're fighting to the last breath to remain in control of the money machine. And as long as they have that control of the money machine, they can hire men in black, mercenaries, politicians. So it is down to a very few people. And once they are removed from control, then everything will change. So we've got to go after the visible members. So obviously, we have put out a warrant on Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, because he owes the Dragon family 200 tons of gold, which he does not have. Obviously, the entire Trump cabinet has to go because Howard Lutnick is a mass murderer and a terrorist, and he should not be a U.S. Commerce Secretary. Marco Rubio is a slave of the Allisons who want to enslave humanity. I mean, so we have to go after the visible people, and those are the names that we need to go after, as well as the leaders I mentioned earlier. And that's, once we get that very tip top, then everything will change very quickly. That's my understanding. Next question.
Hi, Ben. In regards to reports of the U.S. pulling forces out of the Middle East, do you believe that the U.S. forces are being evacuated because there's something larger planned rather than because the United States is losing?
My understanding is that they're losing. They were so arrogant, they didn't build bunkers for their various bases around Iran. And when they started getting hit by missiles, they're forced to run into hotels to hide, and then the hotels were targeted. So I think it was just bad planning. But any talk of the United States staging a ground invasion of Iran is a fantasy. It would require 1.6 million troops, which would mean a general mobilization of U.S. society, and there's no public support for that. And even if they did mobilize 1.6 million troops, they couldn't get them across the Atlantic Ocean on ships because those ships would be sunk by missiles. So no, I think what we're seeing, if it's something larger, is a switch for the U.S. and Western military intelligence agencies from being slaves of Satanists to being the good guys, and that's the transformation I think we're going to see. But what we're seeing in the Middle East is pure and simple a military defeat. Any expert will tell you that. People on the ground will tell you that. Then we're being told. My own military sources say, and this was a couple months ago, at least 10,000. And you can do that. You can confirm this by going to the various in Europe and the United States and seeing how full they are. Next question.
Hi, Ben. In regards to the current Middle East conflict, at what point would you consider this to be World War III? Does it mean that Europe and China needs to enter with large troops or weapons commitment? What geopolitical thing would need to occur for you to say we've now crossed the line into World War III?
My own view is that World War III has been raging for more than 10 years, and it's a hybrid war. It involves assassinations, special forces, bribery, weather warfare, and it's a struggle over the process of deciding what we as a species do in the future. But it's also clear, and I know this from the beginning, that the Russian, Chinese, American military at the highest levels have agreed that they're not going to allow the Armageddon scenario that Chabad wants. They're not going to let anybody be fooled into starting, nuclear war, and there's not going to be a full-scale war with ground troops. The fact is that the United States right now is a naval power, it's an air power. They don't have the troops on the ground required to actually fight a war like World War II or World War I in Europe or in the Middle East. It's just not going to happen. So it's a hybrid war. It's been going on for quite a while, and it's going to end soon. But we're not going to see the scenario of Gog versus Magog, where 90% of humanity, we're never going to let that happen. And instead what's happening is that hunted down, they're being isolated, and they're about to lose. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. Elon Musk says that money is likely to disappear within 10 years because robots and AI will end up providing everything. If AI and robots do outproduce anything humans could consume, what do you actually need money for? Do you think that this ends up becoming a reality in the next 10 to 20 years?
This is predicated on the fact that our whole reason to exist is to consume products, and that whole basis of thinking is wrong. What we want to do as a species is actually build life, so create more ecosystems, regenerate nature, live longer, live healthier, being closer in touch with nature. We don't want some sort of future where people in diapers sit in their little AI tanks watching virtual reality TV and doing nothing while robots change their diapers. That's not the sort of future we want. We want real humans in the real world interacting with real nature and with other real humans, not some sort of dystopia where we're all just fed from food tubes while we watch AI. That's not the future we want. Okay, well, that's what I have to say for myself this week, and I hope to see you again.